All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. My name is David the Western Otaku, and I am here for a special live stream. Joining me today is the one, the only Astro Nerd Boy.
Hey, what's up, Western Otaku?
Hey, so glad you could join me today. I'm really been looking forward to this.
Yeah, so have I. It should be a lot of fun.
let me bring up my notes here real fast so that we have we can do this the right way. And I certainly expect this to sort of go off the rails at some point, but you know, notes do help.
Right.
Okay, so go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, Astro, and what it is that you do, aspirations, goals, and all that sort of stuff.
All right. Well, yeah, as most people know me, Astro Nerd Boy, and I've been doing this whole online thing since probably the 90s when I came up with the name Astro Nerd Boy. Started anime in about 2002, although technically I was introduced to it in 89 in Japan. And of late, I've also spread out into gaming. So I've got my own Twitch channel. And also on YouTube, mostly doing weekly on Knights of the Old Republic, the old Star Wars game, and some Fate Grand Order, since that has that anime tie-in. So that's on the mobile front. So I don't know. That's pretty much me in a nutshell. And when I'm not working to death for my main job, so.
But yeah, it's definitely hard to try to juggle work and an online work.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Especially when you got a job like mine where you're on call 24/7, literally. So, but one thing's I always wanted to ask you is how did you get started in all this? Because I don't think I ever knew how you got started in all this.
Live streaming or anime?
Well, just in the whole anime thing.
Personally, it was just a hobby. And it started off with me being a complete and total noob, like most people, and going to the one. Not to put too fine a point on it, it all hinges back on Gunslinger Girl. Yeah. Season 2 had been announced, and this was back 10 years ago. And at the time, it would take Funimation Entertainment about a year and a half to once they acquired a license to finally release a DVD. It was a really long process. And so I remember I went online, I signed up to the message boards because I thought Funimation could tell me, you know, when and where and how. And I was just like everyone else. I went there, hey guys, I'm new. When is this going to be coming out? When are you going to make more of this? And so I met a whole bunch of wonderful people there, and it sort of became this recurring hobby. And somewhere I never intended to get into making videos on YouTube or even live streaming until about 2012, 2013. I started watching some YouTubers that my wife or my then fiance introduced me to. She introduced me to some early on, and then once she became my wife, you know, I continued on the trend. I was really inspired by certain ones like Wheezy Waiter, Rhett and Link, and the Green Brothers, and I dabbled in like one or two videos. But I really, what limited me was my technology. I only had a really rinky-dink Android record very well, and I put it off until my then job. I got downsized, and that pretty much papers. And my boss was like, "You need to go do something creative. Write a book, make a student film, go do something that's you." And during this transitionary period, I thought, you know what? I'm going to do like everybody else. I'm going to make a video talking about what I love just for a hobby. And I made a video talking about, I think the very first video I made was talking about the brand new announced Ghost in the Shell Arise OVA/movie,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was so bad. It was so terrible. The quality was so garbage that I cringe every time I think about it. Um, and then I think I made another one talking about some rumors with Tenchi Muyo, a rumored OVA 4 that might have been coming up. And then I sort of struck gold when I made a video talking about the My Little Pony fandom. And I talked about, I don't remember exactly what it was. Oh, I remember. Yeah. I made a video talking about a young boy who went to school with a My Little Pony backpack, and he had been bullied by another student. And the principal, as a solution, told him, well, just leave the backpack at home and you won't be bullied. And it made me so angry that I had to rant. And so my first several videos were kind of like me ranting about this and me ranting about that, and I had no direction. Walked away from it because I started working construction, came back 4 months later. That video had blown up. My channel had gotten a lot of subscribers, and then because I didn't make any content for 4 or 5 months, it immediately imploded, and I spent the next 5 years trying to recover a channel that I walked away from. Had I followed up, had I remembered that I had a channel, I probably would have been semi-famous,
Right?
by YouTube anime YouTuber standards. But that's how that all started. Just a stupid brony video that that got a lot of attention. And had it not been for that, me going, oh wow, people are interested in what I have to say, I would not be here right now.
Yeah, that's hilarious how that happens. You know, in my own channel, I had always vowed I'd never do any kind of videos. Maybe something like this. You know, I could see myself if someone invited me on, wanted to interview me or something. Okay, fine, that's fine. But I had just a personal project I'm working on, and I needed to practice video editing and putting together videos and trying out software. And I was like, oh yeah, I do have a YouTube channel. And I was like, oh wow, I've got like 340 something subscribers, and I don't know how, but okay, cool. I guess maybe I could try something. So yeah, so I understand totally.
It's kind of amazing when you think about the fact that, you know, one of the things that I always ask myself, why me? What exactly that makes people interested in anything that I would have to say or do? And, you know, I don't question it. You know, I don't have any reasons for why I watch some of the people on YouTube that I watch. And I guess if I did, that would take the magic away from it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, it's always hard to know why these things. I mean, right now I've got just a video that I did on the whim. I knew it'd be a little bit helpful for Fate Grand Order, but it's rapidly become my most popular FGO video, and like my subscription count is like been slowly but steadily rising as a result. And you're like, really? It's not even that special a video, but okay, cool.
Okay, anyway. Now you are not to put too fine a point on it, you're a very huge Tenchi Muyo, I want to say connoisseur of sorts. You're very well versed in the Tenchi Muyo lore, and just basically as the franchise. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into that and the extent to which you are, say, a fan?
Well, yeah, you know, it's back in, what was it? Well, actually, I'll try to keep this kind of as brief as I can, but when I was introduced to anime in '89 in Yokota Air Base, Japan, my roommate at the time told me that anime would be very popular in 10 years. And fast forward to 2002, I'm working at WorldCom. WorldCom is imploding, and my whole department just got wiped. And I'm sitting at home, no job. Thankfully, I had saved up money, and because I had made so much money at WorldCom, I wasn't worried about being unemployed. You know what I mean? I had already decided, yeah, I'm just taking a month off, you know. And I went on Amazon because I remember what my old buddy had said. And I looked for anime, just some of the old titles that were around back then. Bubblegum Crisis,
Yes.
Ranma 1/2. Ranma 1/2 was a new anime. Boy, that ages me. When I was in Japan, I mean, it was literally on TV once a week when I was in there.
Wow.
And so I looked for this stuff, and it was like, whoa, wow, okay, my buddy was right. And so I thought, well, I'll rent something. And there was a company called Green Scene who would rent DVDs, and they had everything anime. Netflix back then, of course, was just for those who aren't old enough to know. Netflix back then was just a DVD rental place, not a streaming service. And
Right.
so,
And I definitely had my subscription. I mean, that's how I was
Yes.
able to first watch all of Cardcaptor Sakura, because every place that I went to did not carry the volumes for me to buy.
well, yeah, see, and the thing is that Netflix had some anime, but Green Scene had all anime. Basically, if someone licensed an anime, Green Scene had it in their collection. So that's the only reason I went with them. But yeah, so I tried. Amazon showed that there were like a couple of little tiny series. One was Oh My Goddess, the 5-episode OVA. It was called Oh My Goddess in the West.
Right.
And then the other one was Handmaid May, which was 10 episodes or 11 episodes. And so I thought, okay, those are short. They'll give me a taste of what anime's like, right? And they were both happen to be kind of harem titles, right?
Uh-huh.
And I like, oh, you know what? This stuff is actually pretty fun, pretty good. So I rented Love Hina next. And I was like, okay, I like this harem stuff. I probably shouldn't. It's totally nutso, but hey, I love harem stuff. And I went online and I asked, I said, okay, what started this harem stuff? And everyone goes, Tenchi. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I went out and looked. And as you know, the first, if you've never looked for Tenchi before and you go out there, suddenly there's just like a overload of Tenchi titles. You're like, well, where do I start? And
Right.
So everyone pointed me to the original, the canon OVA titles. And so I rented the 3-disc set that Pioneer had at the time. And I watched it for the harem, and I came back for the story. In fact, back then, you rented these DVDs, you watched them as fast as you could to get them back so that you could get more bang for your buck.
Right.
And in this instance, instead of turning it around in 24 hours, I actually kept it for a whole weekend. Because it was like, because the original 2 OVA series for Tenchi, it was just, like I said, I came there for the harem, and the story just, every time I watched it, I'm like, wow, there are just layers upon layers to this thing. Wow, this is just insane. And so I said, well, okay, but as soon as I get a job and have gainful employment, this is the first DVD set I'm buying. And it was like, good grief, it was outrageously expensive.
Now, who owned the license to OVA 1 whenever you bought it?
It was Pioneer back then.
It was Pioneer?
Yeah, they had OVA 1 and 2 branded together. They just called it Tenchi Mio. That's all they did. But they basically lumped everything together into the original set was a 3-disc set. And then it came with some extras that got them into a little bit of hot water because they included some doujinshi stuff from Kajishima Sensei that they did not have the rights to do. And they also kind of mixed things up by including stuff from Tenchi Universe. But yeah, that's where it started. And so I basically started trying to seek out all knowledge about this, online.
Like a good anime fan.
Well, yeah, anime fan, but like a good any kind of fan. Like if you watch Star Wars for the first time, I mean, you want to go out and read up and find out everything you can, right? So yeah, just a good genre.
Go get that encyclopedia on all the characters and places and
yes,
weapons.
and today it's so much easier with all the wiki sites, but back then it was not so easy. There was an FAQ site that was just a single page, and half of that was dedicated to AIC, the production company for Tenchi. Had an English forum back then, so half of that FAQ was for the forums, and I joined the forums, and that was where things kind of turned around for me. I mean, where I went to the next level of fandom. The girl who was running the FAQ was ready to turn it over, and so she turned it over to me, and so then I turned it into what it's become today. But
you still have that, or you still administrate that?
Yeah, I still do. Although I'll admit I don't do as much on it anymore these days, and it's just a time constraint issue. Plus the fact that. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you have a link that you could post in chat for those that might be interested in going and checking it out?
I'll do it there right now. I can spell. Watch this. Tenchi. Tenchi.astronerdboy.com. There you go.
Awesome.
So pretty straightforward. That's on my own domain, so I should keep up with it better than I do. The only reason I don't is because I know the people that run the Tenchi wiki site, and they do an amazing job. So, and I've helped them out actually from time to time. If I had more time, I'd probably help them out more. But yeah, I still run the FAQ, and I still post stuff from time to time over there, and I do have some unique content over there, old interviews and stuff. But yeah, the whole Tenchi thing, that was where it was started. And what was cool is back in those days on AIC's forums, because AIC was a Japanese company, there were some Japanese fans who spoke English.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, and so they came over to the English side, and they would tell us a lot of things. So that's where I learned well in advance of OVA 3 even being done, or GXP being done, that, like, for example, Tenchi's mother's name was supposed to be Kione, and up until then, her name was Chika or something from Tenchi Universe. And the Japanese fans were like, yeah, but her name was actually supposed to be Kione. And they were the ones who told us a lot of different things. And that was where I learned, because back then I was a shipper, a Ryoko shipper. And I even wrote a piece for some now defunct website whose name I can't even remember, but they did Tenchi's content. And I wrote why Ryoko was the only one for Tenchi. And
good man.
But I learned though, but talking to these fans, and some of them, like True Shiol, for example, I mean, he was the guru. I mean, because he could read Japanese, he was half Japanese, so he understood the cultural aspects way more than I ever could. He understood the lore way better than I could, and a lot of that was because he had read all this stuff. So that made him like just an amazing resource, and sadly we've lost contact with him over the years. But they were the ones him and Onishin and Rolf were the ones who said, by the way, Astro Nerd Boy, we know you love Ryoko, but it's going to be a harem. It's going to be a harem ending, and
he gonna get all the women.
Yes, he's going to get them all. But the thing, and I hated that, because even though I like harem titles, all the harem titles, the protagonist ends up with one girl.
Right. You're teased for the duration of the show,
right?
And then I would say at least better part of 80% of the time you cringe when you find out who they're going to end up with.
Or they cop out, like if you ever watched the old Saber Marionette J series.
I'm watching it, but I haven't finished it yet.
Oh, well, I better not say much more than that. But there are titles that there are titles where they cop out, and
oh yeah,
the character still makes a choice, but they don't want to piss off the audience.
The worst cop out for me is when they just lays out and go for the childhood friend has dibs thing, and I'm like, you know what? The childhood friend, sorry if I'm going to rant for a minute here. Childhood friend has had X number of years to get there, and they haven't for whatever reason. I'm sorry, you've had your shot. Now that you're in high school, and he's finally going and has interest in somebody else. Now you want to get? No, I don't like that. Screw that. Yeah. Childhood friend does not get dibs. I'm sorry. That needs to be a T-shirt. You can look it up. It's a thing.
And I'm trying to think of all the harem titles I've watched. There are some where I guess the childhood friend doesn't win out, but
there are a few. Definitely a few.
But the story-wise for Tenchi, this was the part I resisted. Was like, okay, why? The whole harem thing just felt like a cop-out to me, and in the end, it turned out that there actually are plot story reasons to have Tenchi be in a harem, not just, Kajishima Sensei's wish fulfillment. And so once I understood that, all those guys turned me around. And so I was like, all right, you're right. It's going to be a harem ending. But still, Ryoko's best girl.
Oh, well, of course. I mean, there's a lot of arguments to be made for for Washu, but I'm sorry. When I first watched, my first introduction to Tenchi, anything Tenchi, was probably people talking about it on various forums, and I know this is going to sound insane, but my first real introduction with Tenchi was a very, very old anime music video that was edited together to Weird Al Yankovic's "Pretty Fly for a Rabbi," and it was all it was so perfectly synchronized and cut to the timing, and it actually seemed as if it was in context with the lyrics of the song, that I must have watched that thing over and over and over again. And it blew my mind because I'm sitting here watching this thing going, despite the awesome editing, this looks like a really good show. And one day I happened to local entertainment center, and they had Tenchi Universe and Tenchi in Tokyo, both of them for I think $20, and these were the Pioneer sets, and I yoinked them right away, yoink and double yoink, and I think I had to go a little hungry the rest of that week. But and I watched Universe and immediately fell in love with it. And of course, being the good anime fan that I was, I got to looking around at other sources of information and discovered that the Universe and the OVAs were two separate beasts. Even though I was greatly entertained by Universe.
Yeah, Universe is entertaining. And I've got no problem with those people who like it better than the canon OVA series and stuff. But actually, to be honest, I don't even have a problem with people who like Tenchi in Tokyo better. There are a few. I'm not in that school, but
I have to throw Tokyo and all fans of Tokyo right under that bus. It was without a doubt one of the most tedious attempts at watching an anime I think I ever had.
Well, for me, as I recall it, my own the saving grace, I guess, if you will, on it was that it had a really nice Ryoko and Tenchi episode. And I think that was basically the one part about the series that I thought, oh yeah, that's really nice. It's a really nice episode of them basically spending a day together, I think, if I recall correctly. And I think it might have been episode 8, but don't quote me on that. It's been way too many years. But yeah, otherwise the story was just pretty much, they were milking the cow at that point in time. AIC and Pioneer were.
Now, you if I'm not mistaken, your love of Tenchi has also taken you in a direction where you also are now sort of involved in the new light novels.
Yeah, well, new in the West, yeah, but old in Japan. But yeah, I was the official adapter for the True Tenchi Muyo novels, the trilogy. The novels are Yosho, Jirai, and Washu. And
now, what is exactly an adapter? What does that job entail?
Okay, so an adapter is basically the first line editor, and the translator translates it, and then the adapter gets the pages, and then the publisher has a list of guidelines on, okay, this is what we do for translations. So in the case of Seven Seas, for example, they have a deal. It's like, we don't spell senpai with an M, we spell it with an N. So if the translator used M,
I love the M version.
Well, N is the N, November as in N, is the correct phonetically speaking. I think that's where they were shifting to, is a more correct one. Well, whereas the M is not, technically correct. There is no M in by itself in phonetically spelled Japanese. So
right. And I've had plenty of not arguments, but plenty of debates going, well, it's one of those rare words that technically could go either way.
Well, it sounds like an M. I mean, if you hear the Japanese, it sounds like an M.
Yeah, because they hard that in.
Yeah.
Some,
Yeah, it definitely sounds like senpai, but that's just an example. But you have there are all kinds of punctuational uh, rules and stuff, and so you have to go through the documents and basically make sure that the document follows all of Seven Seas rules, and then you have to make sure that grammatically it is correct. So passive sentences are right out, for example. Good lord, I never even paid attention when I write. I don't pay attention to passive sentences. I used to, or at least I did not until I had to do these adaptations. And you have this in a Word document, and you have Word highlight passive sentences and other grammatical problems, and oh my goodness, it's like total nightmare. So because you have to actually write these, then rewrite the sentence as an active sentence. So that's the primary deal. And then the reason they hired me was because of my long history with Tenchi. In fact, 12 years ago, Seven Seas had thought about licensing the series.
It's that old.
Well, it came out actually after OVA 2 in Japan.
Really?
Yes. And it was because now this I cannot prove this. This was stuff from the old AIC forum days, but the Japanese told us that Pioneer, because Pioneer was partnered with AIC in Japan, and AIC did the production and Pioneer did the distribution. OVAs, especially back then, were very expensive. So even though the series was profitable as an OVA, the cost per episode is quite high, so the return on investment is not as much. So they weren't getting as much profit on the series. And the release of the what was it called, Mihoshi Special, where we first get introduced to the Galaxy police officer Kyone, and then we also get introduced to Pretty Sammy. Supposedly that was Pioneer doing that, wanted that done because they wanted to test the waters, because at that time Hasegawa sensei had already started writing her light novels for Tenchi to take the story from where she thought it should go before OVA 2, and those were very popular, so Pioneer wanted to test the waters and see what the anime folks would like. And the special obviously sold well, so Pioneer supposedly said, we want a TV series, and thus Tenchi Universe was born, and then the Pretty Sammy OVAs and TV series were born. But Kajishima Sensei did not want to do a TV series. He just wanted to do OVAs, and his stuff was like put on the shelf. It's like, sorry, you're on the shelf. So the novels were his response to his works being put on the shelf, and as well as the doujinshi that he would do. All that was in response to him not being able to do OVA 3 when he wanted to. So these novels came out after OVA 2 to kind of flesh out the world, kind of in a Tolkien-esque sense. It's actually kind of amazing. But
so how well have the True Tenchi Muyo novels performed once they've? How many have you done all three of them?
Yeah, all three were released. I think the third one was released at the beginning of the year. But Seven Seas does not share confidential information like that to me. The only thing they've told me is that the series is done well, and that they expect it to have long legs. And basically what that means, for those who don't know, is that the series won't have those high numbers, but it will be a continual seller over the years, because there are going to be people right now who might listen to this and go, wait, the novels were licensed? I didn't know that. And then go out into Amazon or wherever and pick them up. So,
and I'm the exact same way. I mean, I think my days of blind buying anime, well, I still do a significant amount of blind buy. With such a resource available to us now, going out and saying, oh, hey, look, there's this show called My Goddess. What is this? Do I really want to take a gamble and spend $30 on 4 episodes and it be garbage? or do I, now you can go and say watch any Anituber and get a sort of unbiased opinion on anime. So the days of blind buying for me are a thing of the past, and now I can't tell you how many novels, light novels, games, anime shows that I've gone and actively sought out from something just as simple as an internet meme.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I hear you totally. And so yeah. These. I'll admit though, I'm a little disappointed that I was kind of hoping that it would probably do better than it did. But my one disappointment with Seven Seas is that I don't think they promoted it as much. My Twitter timeline was mostly filled with Japanese people buying it. And then suddenly I'm getting friend requests from or follows from Japanese fans of the Tenchi. So, but that's actually been a pretty cool thing because now then they can tell me certain cool things about what's going on in Japan. So that's cool.
Now talking about Tenchi Muyo and talking about the light novels, and I assume Tenchi also has it ever had a manga series, or was it always light novels?
Nah, well, the light novels are what's called the canon because
Right.
Kajishima Sensei wrote them, and he's written those 3 novels. Those are the only ones that have been licensed for the U.S. But after OVA 1, he wrote what is translated as 101 Secrets of Tenchi Muyo, where he basically answers 101 questions, and it's a little 101 Dalmatian little in joke there. Seriously, that's why he called it 101 Secrets. But and then he's written all these GXP novels and a bunch of other novels in doujinshi, but manga was written by other people. There were manga series, and it's basically just other people doing whatever, just telling their own stories. Kajishima Sensei is not involved in those. And there was even, and it is, I'd actually like to have these just for the collector's purpose, but there was actually a 6-issue American comic book release of it.
Of Tenchi?
Yes.
But I actually have one.
Oh, you do? I've heard that they are just the worst things ever.
They're god awful. I have one issue. I think it was Dark Horse Comics that did it. I think they were notorious for doing the comic book releases, and of course, the pages are flipped so that it's Americanized reading from left to right instead of. It's bad, and I have it in a sleeve somewhere floating around, protected with all of my other comics, probably in a stack with my Gwenpool comics. Now I've heard you mention Kajishima Sensei, and this is something that I've known about you probably for the 10 years going on 11 years that I've known you.
Mm-hmm.
You are a stickler. You are a dyed-in-the-wool, you know where I'm going with this, a dyed-in-the-wool stickler for honorifics. And I mean, so much so that I think you will either rage quit or drop. Have you ever dropped a manga or an anime because it lacked honorifics? And how did all this honorific stuff start?
Well, okay. So on the first deal, have I ever rage quit one? No, but I may not buy it. Back in my rental days, well, actually, I was actually a lot more. How shall we say it? More tolerant of these things back then. So a lot of my old collection, Van Dread and the You're Under Arrest, and basically all the stuff from Animego. Although Animego would throw in the occasional honorific like Senpai and stuff, but I didn't. I went ahead and bought all that stuff, right? but Rage quit because of it. I probably wouldn't even start it, especially today with the internet the way it is. I find out in advance whether or not a title is going to have it, and if it does, it's immediately going to get priority, and if it does not, well, hey, I only have limited funds, so it's going to be picked to whatever. But as to where it got started, most people assume, and it's understandable, so I don't hold it against them, but most people assume that it was because, well, you went to Japan and you're just one of these, and I hate the term, but weeaboo, one of these weeb kind of folks. And it's like, no, that has nothing to do with it, because my philosophy is actually the same. It wouldn't matter if it's Japanese, German, Italian. I don't care. If it's that language is the origin, I want how those honorifics retained. I don't want these things changed. But that aside, back in the early 80s when I was collecting X-Men, let me pull that up real quick. Sorry. Marking time.
While he's doing that, I want to make it abundantly clear on my end that I'm of the opinion, and this is strictly my own opinion. I'm of the opinion that as long as the listener, the viewer, is aware of what the Japanese honorific system is, that as long as you hear it and are able to, put in context what's being said, I'm not so much a stickler for it. I'm just a stickler for bad translations.
Oh yeah, no, I understand that, and I do not belittle people who don't share the same opinion as me. I don't, because I understand everyone is different. But yeah, for me it was issue 172 of the Uncanny X-Men.
Uncanny.
And it's like, wait a minute, a Marvel comic book with the X-Men is what got you on this honorific kick? And it's like, well, yeah, the story had them in Japan to attend Wolverine's wedding.
Spoiler, Wolverine gets married in Japan.
Well, actually, I'm not going to say whether he gets married or not. They're just going there for a wedding. But
who's the best man?
Actually, they never got that far. Because you know how these things are, We go over there and suddenly we have to fight the bad guys that show up. Silver Samurai, I think, was one of them, and some other ones. But anyway, the Wolverine was addressed by people as Wolverine Sama. Now, I had no idea. The teenage me had no idea what Sama meant. And then sometimes he was Logan-san, and sometimes he was Logan-sama. But I quickly got the gist that even though I didn't know what Sama meant, and even though I didn't know what San meant, I got the gist that, okay, these things are important because they're in Japan and they clearly don't mean the exact same thing as Mr. or whatever Western honorific we would use, right? They're right. Clearly, and I could kind of get a gist of Wolverine because they were always addressing Wolverine as Wolverine Sama, that, okay, maybe Sama has a greater impact because Wolverine is obviously greater than Logan in terms of character. Wolverine is the superhero. Logan is just this guy with wacky hair.
and to put it in a little bit more easier context, take Star Wars for example.
Right.
How many times have you heard Lord Vader?
Right.
I don't think once in the history of Star Wars has any underling ever come up and been like, Mr. Vader.
Right. Yeah, it's always been Lord Vader or Darth Vader.
That's right. There was always a hierarchy to how the Sith were referenced.
Right. And they were called Dark Lords of the Sith. So, okay, so Lord or Darth, either one applied, and that's why it doesn't trigger me or anything that they don't always call him Darth Vader. For example, it's Lord Vader or Lord Sidious or Lord.
And when they want to be ultra casual, it's just Vader.
Right. Which I don't know. Is anyone ever ultra casual with Vader?
Not to his face, no.
Yes.
Even the guy who got almost choked out in the beginning of A New Hope still called him Lord Vader.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much for the follow,
Yes.
Life Pecker.
Thank you, Life. But yeah, so that comic book, and it being an American comic book at that, is kind of what set the groundwork for me to have my opinion on how honorific should be treated. And like I said, I was the same way for anything Indiana Jones. There's that whole scene in, is it the first movie, I think, where, or maybe it's the third, I don't remember, but it's like, Guten Tag, Herr Jones. And
Yeah.
okay, I'm not German. I've never taken German. I didn't know what Herr meant, but I kind of got a gist of it, But it adds a flavor to the English, even though they're speaking in English. Just using the native honorific just gives it a certain flavor. Now, fast forward to when I was in Japan. And it wasn't until I got to Japan that I actually understood. A Japanese coworker told me, okay, well, we don't use sama that much in Japanese culture and normal Japanese speak. Maybe the first time someone's introduced, maybe. But after that, it's san, it's san. But, and this was a key moment, because this stuck with me to this day. We use sama as a literary device, or dono, or whatever. All the honorifics that they use that you see in manga or in anime are mostly used as literary devices. And it's basically to help the reader or viewer to understand how these people relate to each other on that hierarchical scale, like you were talking about. So that is the other thing that kind of I clued in on. It's like, okay, well, honorifics, we don't really have that. I mean, yeah, you can say lord is higher than, not being a lord, but to me, lords in Western sense are a nobility. Not everyone is a lord.
And in America, pretty much the only social hierarchy, the only quote unquote titles that we really have in America are reserved for judges and elected officials.
Yes.
Maybe doctors. You could refer to them as doctor. Let me take a second out here and read through my chat real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've got let me see. Christo Poole says anime nerd boy takeover. Yes, this is if this works out, then we'll try to do something like this maybe once a week, or whenever we're able to schedule an opportunity to sit down and maybe talk some nerd talk. He also posts Hagedai, Shuffle, and Love Hina, ? I'm not sure if that was in reference to the childhood friend or if it was just other harem-esque shows. Red123 Wood came in and said, "Can we watch anime?" No, we don't watch anime here. I don't propagate illegal anime streaming. Bad Wolf Right says, "Don't get him started." We were talking about the honorifics, and we got you started, unfortunately.
Oh, that's okay.
Again, a huge thank you for the follow, Life Pecker. I'm actually doing very well. How are you doing? And no, I won't mind the name. There are song requests, but you'll have to tell me what it is since you can't post from your iPhone. It's called OFB, Mad About Bars. Give me a second. Let me look that up and see if I can cue that up for you real fast.
While you're looking at it, Crystal Pool says, "No sailing the high seas." I don't know what that means.
No sailing the high seas here. No pirating.
Oh, gotcha.
We don't.
Yes.
Yeah, there are. Whenever I made the move over to Twitch, one of the things that I immediately started looking for was a place to move my anime content from YouTube. And unfortunately, the only place that we have is the IRL just chatting category.
Right.
And it's sort of a catch-all for IRL stuff that isn't necessarily gaming. And so it's where you're going to find a lot of your people who do, like, say, live shows, or just sitting back, eating their breakfast, talking to their followers. And I noticed a definite lack of anime content. And what anime content there was were people literally just putting up an episode of anime and letting it stream while they watched it. And that's neither transformative. It's neither it's not a review, and it doesn't follow the basic guidelines of what is that called, what you have the ability to do when it comes to using other people's intellectual property. So it doesn't follow those guidelines.
So
And
it wasn't a true reaction video then?
right, it was just people watching it, streaming an entire episode of anime.
Okay. Yeah, that's different.
There's no content. There's really no content on Twitch. Fair use, thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. There's no content on Twitch that can mirror what you get on YouTube. The platform they haven't found a way to do that. And so that was when I came up with the idea to do the Anime Attack Show, which is a weeknight variety show where we come in, we do all the stuff that I did on YouTube, but we do it in a way where we can interact with each other in real time. So we can talk about what we're watching, new stuff that's coming out, news and information, gossip, rumors, and, have fun at the same time, poking fun at some of the stuff that we love. Because let's face it, who can make fun of what we love the most than the people that love it? I mean,
absolutely.
I could definitely, tell you, don't you dare make fun of Cowboy Bebop. I'll make fun of Cowboy Bebop because I love it so much.
Yeah.
But let me look up the song real quick. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead and continue.
Well, I was just going to say, I'll try to keep it brief. But yeah, my whole thing with honorifics, and like I said, back in the early days when I got into anime, because I didn't get into anime until 2002. But, and even then I wasn't a high honorific stickler. But I think it was just watching, it was some of these subtitles and it was Handmaid May, because that was like the second anime I watched. And that's where it kind of stuck out to me for the first time. But in the anime, when the little robot May is introduced to her to-be owner, she's running through a list of honorifics to address him, and there are more Japanese honorifics than there are English ones. And so the English subtitles actually had to go to French honorifics just to fill out her list. And I saw that and I thought, wait a minute, no. She did not say anything French. Why are you using French? And I wasn't even mad at the time. Seriously, I was not mad that they were going Mr., or Master, or whatever weird things they were coming up with on the English side, or even ignoring the honorific. But when they hit the French one, I was like, okay, no, this is wrong. But it was just, in those early days, thanks to Green Scene, I was just marathoning anime like mad. And then doing reviews on a site called Community Anime Reviews. And it was just, as I kept watching this stuff, so I'd watch it in English dub first and then watch the subtitles. And I would watch the subtitles and I kept going, I really wish they would use honorifics. And then I hit Ayori Aoshi, and it was one of the rare titles that Pioneer did where they put all the Japanese honorifics in to the subtitles. And the flavor of the translation was so much nicer with the subtitles than it was without. That was one of those English dubs where they actually use some Japanese honorifics. Not all, but they use some. But and I don't care about the dub so much. It's just me. That's not a slam on dub watchers. That is not what I meant there. It's just me personally. I don't really care that much about the dubs anymore. But the subtitles, that I think was the last straw for me. I saw that and I said, okay, I'm going to buy this. This is next on my list of things to buy after Tenchi. When I get a job is Ai Yorioshi, and just because of the subtitles, and that started it basically, because it just, I realized people can hear it, and I get that, and that was what back in those early days I used to talk to different translators of the time. I still do, but the translators of the time, and that was one of their arguments. And they're like, well, you can hear San, you can hear if he says Keiichi-san, so why do I need to put San in there? I don't need to. I said, well, okay, well, why do you need to put Mr. then? Because sometimes they will say Mr. so-and-so, and you put Mr. Or like in the case of like a Rama or some other title where they would use other foreign honorifics, Spanish or German or Italian, you have no problem using those. I heard them. So why do you need to put those in there?
Yeah.
So basically every argument that's ever been made to me about honorifics can be shot down. But, I get some people just, I hate to use the word racist, but sometimes I do think that sometimes the anti-honorific people are just not, they just have something against Japanese. Because I'm not asking for this thing to be filled with a bunch of Japanese weirdo terms, and my belief is not, like I said earlier, is not limited to Japanese. If we were watching something that was Italian based, and we were watching it in Italian with English subtitles, I would want the Italian honorifics used, because that is the flavor of the title, and that's why I was disappointed. There was some Chinese movie years ago that won awards and stuff. But they did not use any of the Chinese honorifics in the titles. They just, everything became English. And I remember being very disappointed about that. I don't know Chinese honorifics, but I would have liked to have seen them. So that's it. It's basically a flavor thing. And if, in my opinion on anime, and this is just for anime purposes, if you're watching anime in Japanese, you're looking for a Japanese perspective, in my opinion. So give me the Japanese perspective. I don't need the American one, because if I wanted the American one, I'd watch it in a dub. That's just my opinion.
It is. I could definitely attest that there are, as someone who has seen both the dub and the sub of several shows, I can definitely tell you that there is a different flavor. There's a completely different approach. Even today, companies like Funimation and Sentai Filmworks, there is a completely different approach to an English dub adaptation versus a subtitle translation adaptation. You can watch the same show with a dub, and there are these nuances, there are these turns of phrase that are in there for the sake of localization that you don't get when you watch the same show in Japanese with subtitles. And so I agree, like when you watch something that is in Japanese with subtitles, you're going for a specific context, you're going for a specific cultural experience. Otherwise, if you were going for a straight American, I'm not going to use the word whitewashing, but if you're going for a straight American adaptation, something that's easy to comprehend, to contextualize, then definitely go for the dub. Chris Poole says it's like today's reversionings. That was one of the things about Funimation. Whenever you would have reversioned by, it always annoyed me, because that pretty much meant that there was a lot of tampering that had been done to force that, to shoehorn that into an English adaptation. I think that my philosophy is, let me mute this. We've moved off of that one song. I think when it comes to personally, when it comes to translations and adaptations, I want, more than anything, I simply want consistency from a company. I think that, like, for example, if a company is going to say a studio is going to make a show, or they're going to make a franchise or intellectual property. They create a world building. They create a framework for which they're going to follow these rules, and these rules dictate where this story can and cannot go. And they call it their Bible. And I think companies that do anime translations need to have a Bible that they follow when it comes to the rules of translations. If you're gonna do one, if you're gonna do one honorific anywhere at all, do them all. Otherwise, don't do them at all for consistency's sake. Either we're going to get it through hearing it, or we're going to get it through seeing it. And of course, and I realize that some things you have to sort of bend a lot of adaptations when it comes to context, because there's a few ways that you can take a translation. There's a very literal method, and then there's a loose literal method, and then there's for entertainment value purposes, how bad do we want to wade through getting this point across translation. And I realize that for consistency's sake, people are going to have a different. You set 5 translators down to the same piece of original material, and you're going to get 5 different translations.
Absolutely.
And this is why I think it's so essential that the people that are working on translations have a strict set of guidelines, especially when it comes to the manga industry. The manga industry seems to fly by the seat of their pants. It's like you get one person who comes in to translate, and you get another person who comes in to translate, and they each have their own set of rules that they follow. And the company's just like, well, whatever you want to do. And it's like, no. That's not it. That's not it. You can't. And I don't know of any off the top of my head, but I'm going to go ahead and say maybe, what was it, Tokyo? Was it Tokyo Pop?
Yeah, Tokyo Pop was basically definitely what hit that rule is basically, if you use them, great. If you don't, great.
Right.
Kare Kano, if I got the short name correct, was a classic example. They weren't using it, which actually ticked me off. And then they got a new adapter in there who put them in, and I was like, woohoo! And then that adapter got put on another project, and it went back to no honorifics, and I was like, okay, I'm pissed.
Yeah, exactly.
But even when they try to do some sort of consistency, like Del Rey had a pro honorific policy right from the start. And I remember talking to their head of manga at the time, and he assured me, he goes, oh yeah, all of our titles are going to have honorifics. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, guess what? All your titles immediately are at the top of my queue. Even if I've never read them, just knowing that you're going to have honorifics, I'll blind buy these suckers. But Negima, some people know me for back in the day when I used to do all the spoilers when Negima was out, the official translations there were, in the early days, they were using honorifics, but Peter David, I think that's his name. He's a fairly decently well-known writer, funny guy, but he did a lot of rewriting. The first 4 or 5 volumes of Negima before the twins came in and fixed all that stuff years later. He basically added a lot of stuff, and he rewrote a lot of stuff that basically killed the story, because things that were being set up for later, he was writing out to write in a joke. And it was like, really? But they were using honorifics, and I didn't catch it at the time. It wasn't until years later. But then as they got different translators over the years, one of them really hated honorifics. I'm not going to say the name because that's not the point, right? But this person used the bare minimum, and then they tried to westernize everything that they could. And then when the twins came in, the twins basically have the best adaptation, because they actually follow that rule that you have, which is if you're going to use them all. And but the twins though are awesome because they that's Athena and oh my god, they're gonna kill me because I can't remember both their names. Alina, oh god, I can't remember their names. I always call them the twins. But they have that accurate but readable philosophy in their adaptations, in their translations. So they know how to ride that line really well in my opinion. So I love their stuff. So if I find out they're working on something, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll give that series a go. But yeah, you're right. Companies, a lot of times, Tokyo Pop was notoriously bad about it. This all over the place, all over the place.
And Tokyo Pop was also notorious for very, very bad scans. I've gotten hold of some issues, some volumes that whole sections of the manga volume were just almost bleached out to the point that you couldn't even make out what was happening. And they really didn't have a good sense of quality control. I just want to say,
Well,
which is probably
especially-
one of the reasons why they're not around anymore.
Well, I was gonna say toward the end there, they got really bad. I mean, it was like, really, what the heck are you people doing? And then they went out of business. You're like, oh, okay, that's what they were doing. They were trying to cut costs.
Yeah, now I was extremely grateful. That, if I'm not mistaken, didn't quite a few of their titles eventually get picked up by Kodansha?
Some of them, yeah, quite some of them did, yeah.
And I was also really sad because a lot of them just went in complete obscurity. Because I have to admit, Tokyo Pop were fairly prolific when it came to stomping out manga, and I have quite a few that was done by them. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, they also had their hand in light novels. And
Yeah.
I think the first 2 volumes of The Slayers was released by Tokyo Pop, wasn't
Well,
it?
actually, it was the first 8. They licensed 6.
Well, I mean, I have the first 2, but I mean, they were the ones that licensed it, right?
Yes, correct. Yes, they were. Well, 7 Tokyo Pop and 7 Seas were the pioneers on light novels. We talked about Tenchi before. Back in those early days, actually, 7 Seas was looking to license those 3 Tenchi Miyo novels back then, but they decided that the market just wasn't there back then. But yeah, Tokyo Pop tried as well and failed. They were going to cut off Slayers at 6 volumes. Well, the storyline ended at volume 8.
Wow.
I mean, now there were more novels besides that, but they were going to leave it hanging. And thankfully, I do give them credit for this. They did go out and spend a little bit of extra money to license the last 2 volumes of that story arc, so that at least that specific story arc was completed in English. So I do give them credit there. But yeah, Tokyo, I know we were talking about honorifics, but yeah, I think I've said everything I need to say there. But yeah, Tokyo Pop, my problem with Tokyo Pop, I think, started at the top, was Stu Levy. And I don't want to attack him personally, but I think he was trying to be hip. And I think that's also what led to Tokyo Pop falling apart.
Yeah.
He was trying to be a DJ or whatever he was trying to do. And, he was just, it was just, I was like, really? Come on, guy. Just, I mean, on one hand, he was kind of brilliant because Tokyo Pop, before then, Dark Horse was doing manga, but they were flipping it.
Yeah.
So
and it wasn't until at some point, I think around the time that Tokyo Pop went under, that Dark Horse Comics came back with a whole new philosophy on their manga, because around that time they started reissuing, or they began, I don't know if they ever did, but I want to say they reissued Oh My Goddess from
did.
Volume 1.
Yep.
And it was so much better than the garbage that they had before.
Yeah,
and I started buying them.
Yeah, and back then I was still fairly connected back then, and I said 7 Seas. That's not it. Dark Horse people, the people in charge, did reach out to me about this, and because me and honorifics, and I talked to them, and they said, well, we're going to put a few in, but we're not going to put them all in. I'm like, oh, come on, dude, seriously? He's like, sorry, man, we're just not going to go all the way, but we'll give you a few. And I was like, all right. But I bought until I had to quit. But I had to quit for medical debt purposes. But yeah, I did buy quite a few of the remastered versions. and then I sold off all my original ones.
Now, talking about on the tail end of honorifics and talking about hipness and popularity and the difference between a dub adaptation versus a sub adaptation. I wanted to kind of go into the fandom aspect of this.
Okay.
It's I'm one of the things that I'm not going to say is a strong point of mine, but one of the things that I find myself doing more often than not is observing group mentality, group behavior, group interests, and the direction that these interests go, and so forth. And I don't know, just something that I've always sort of paid attention to, even from the early days of my fandom, which is, I guess this is one of the things that has led me either towards or against certain popular shows, because I mean, I have my personal philosophy on a popular show is if I don't get in on it at the ground level, then I feel like I've missed my train, and then I'm just rushing to catch up. So I will inevitably wait until the train has left the station, done its rounds, and then parked at the next station before I come in, which is the way I've been with a lot of shows like Dragon Ball and even Bleach. I came into Bleach way after it had already started, but I took a gamble on it, and I decided, well, I don't know when it's going to end, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. But anyway, I watch a lot of the fans. I pay attention to the air of the crowd, and I noticed that it seems to be two types of fans in the anime fandom. I'm not going to say community, because community is relative. In the anime industry and in the anime fandom, the relationship that they have between both the industry and they have with each other in the fandom is really interesting, because you have, on one hand, you have fans that don't necessarily care about all of the little things, like, say, for example, honorifics, or getting this thing just right, or getting that thing just right. They're only in it for the consumption of their hobby, the thing that they love. They're focused on that. They want more anime, and all they know is, when is the next season of Overlord going to be out? When is Funimation or Sentai or Viz going to release the next Blu-ray box set of such and such show? And then you have, of course, the fans that are a little bit more picky, and I'm not going to say they're the guardian watchers of the industry, but they're the ones that, that say, okay, look, you released this Blu-ray and it's got artifacting, it's got problems, it's got this, it's got that. You've had a voice actor, or you had a line changed here, and you had you're messing up Funimation or Sentai or Viz. You've dropped the ball. Where do you find yourself in that group of fans? I mean, have you noticed that there are the fans who just don't care about anything except the anime, and there are the fans that want a higher quality product? Where would you think that you fall into those categories?
Well, I'm always going to be someone who wants higher quality product. That's just me, and I don't think, honestly, that it's just an anime only thing. I actually seem to notice this more in gaming. That's just because I have not, and this is my bad, I've not been as actively involved in a lot of anime forums and stuff as I used to back in the day. Again, it's just a time constraint thing, and for some reason, but I do see some stuff on my Twitter feed, but I mostly see gaming stuff, and it's so the same philosophy is there. I think most people just want to be entertained. And as long as they're entertained, they don't give a rat's rear about honorifics, for example. They don't give a rat's rear about the quality. They don't give a rat's rear or about any of that. As long as just give me my entertainment, and that's all I care about. And I think there is a very vocal minority that actually cares about these things. and it's only, I think, the only time that the casual fan, and I'm not slamming people who are casual fans.
Oh no, we definitely need the casual fans.
Exactly. This is not an attack on them. I get that, and if you're entertained by all that stuff, great. You know, that's awesome. That's awesome. But you know, so now I don't go out and rant and rave. Just again, it's more of a time constraint thing. But I do sometimes when I'm watching something and there's a lack of quality. You know, I'll hit Twitter as I'm watching something and go, seriously, so and so, seriously, and then have a screenshot of whatever that's got me kind of ticked off. But yeah, so I'm probably in that first category that wants quality. But I think though that, like I said, I just think it's just I'm in that vocal minority that just I want the quality. But then again, you and I have been anime fans for years, and so
right.
we're just in a different category. So
next fall will mark my 20th anniversary as an anime fan. Wow. That's definitely something. 22. I was 23 when I discovered what anime was. I want to segue into another part of the anime industry real quick. And it has to do with the evolution of the mainstream of anime.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I first got into anime, I can definitely tell you, it was niche. Oh, it's still very very niche. Don't get me wrong.
Less so today, though.
Yeah, less so today. I mean, the last 3 jobs I had, people knew what anime was. My boss, the administrator of my office, would come to me and be like, "Hey, Dave, have you seen such and such? You know what this is?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've heard of it." And he's like, "Dude, I watched that the other night. Oh man!" And he came to me. He was like, "I don't remember what anime he watched. Rosario Vampire."
Okay, yeah.
And he was like, "Dude," and he had this look on his face. I'm like, "Oh," he goes, "Man, it was nasty." I'm like, "Did you watch it all?" "Yeah." I'm like, "Good man." But and that right there, that was, I think, 2010, 2011. That was a slow progression. 2005, 2004, when I was still very early in my infancy in the anime fandom. I met a guy at my job, a fellow coworker whose nickname was Zell, because he was a huge Slayers fan. So I guess you could tell what his what he would like to be called by. He was also something I had never heard of before. He was a cosplayer. And I was invited to go to a convention and do tabletop role playing.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually invited to go play, what was it? Final Fantasy IX role play, because he and I were both Final Fantasy IX fans. And I said something about, well, is there any anime at these conventions? What do they do? And he got off into anime, and he was also a really huge Neon Genesis Evangelion fan. And so I connected immediately with him as a fellow fan. But I would say, of the 200 plus employees that were at this job, he was like one of maybe only 4 that even would openly talk to me about anime. And then, versus now, you can go up to almost any quote unquote self-described nerd, and they know what anime is. I mean, I could be on live chat, in a multiplayer game with people who are playing Overwatch or Fortnite, and I'll be like, "Hey guys, you watch anime?" And they're like, "Not really, but I really love Dragon Ball Super."
Right.
And I'm like, "Great, that's awesome." They know what anime is, and I watched this progression slowly into the mainstream over the past 2 decades. And I just wanted to bring this up real quick. I pulled up Wikipedia, and I don't know how accurate this is, because these are these are a number of shows that were produced in the year 2000, and I also pulled up the number of shows that were produced this year. And in the year 2000, according to the Wikipedia page, I'm going to bring that up in my browser real quick, if it'll show it. Yeah, there it is. It shows that there were 52 pages in this category. Now, this is, I don't think this is including motion pictures, and it may include OVAs. So you're going to have to kind of adjust it based on those factors. But 52 shows were produced in the year 2000, just 52. And you're thinking, wow, that's a lot of shows. And in 2000, you had things like Argento Soma, Boys B, Boogie Pop Phantom, Digishare It, Love Hina, Inuyasha, Handmaid May, Hajime no Ippo, and you had some fairly good shows that were being produced. And then you jump ahead just 19 years later, and there are 130 shows that were produced in Japan. 130. That's a huge increase in 19 years. There's been more production companies. There's been more production studios, and the demand for anime has just accelerated. And I think it's hitting a critical mass. A lot of fans have this theory that anime is going to blow itself out, but I don't think it is. I don't think that it is. I think what's going to happen is it's going to end up becoming its own thing. You go to places like Netflix, you go to Hulu, and 5 years ago or 4 years ago, you go to Netflix, you type in anime, you didn't get much results because it wasn't a category. It would mistake anime for animation.
Yep.
And so all the keywords were all askew. Now I go to Netflix, and there's a whole category that says Japanese anime.
Yep.
Right there. And I can't think of anything much more mainstream than Netflix. I mean, boom, there it is. So, I mean, my question to you, having talked about all this, is where do you see the evolution of anime and the anime industry into the mainstream going forward into the next decade? I mean, do you think that it's going to burn itself out, blow itself out like a supernova, or do you think that we're going to reach a point where people are no longer going to come in and go, "Oh, you're one of those fans"? I could go out in public wearing my Haruhi Suzumiya T-shirt as a 50-something-year-old and not be frowned upon, as the closet-dwelling, Mountain Dew sucking, Dorito Funyun eating belly crawler who has not seen daylight in X number of years.
Yeah,
and you get that. I've chatted with people from Japan, and I've straight up asked, what do you think an anime fan is? And he literally gave me that definition. He gave me the definition of a dirty nerd who is a shut-in.
Yeah, an otaku.
Not joking.
The classic Japanese definition of otaku.
Classic Japanese definition. If I had enough hair to make a ponytail and I had some 5-day stubble, I would be it.
Yep. Well, I'll be honest. I think the only way for anime to continue to grow in America is actually going to have to start in Japan. And what I mean is, I don't mean that Japan has to cater to America. That's not what I'm saying. Unfortunately, back when I was in Japan, anime was being done mostly for anime purposes. So you had more OVA titles, you had more original titles in my mind. You had anime titles that were adaptations that weren't afraid to just be adaptations. Yeah, they made changes and stuff. Ranma 1/2, for example, or Urusei Yatsura, whatever. But today, unfortunately, as some of the Japanese people I've talked to have told me, anime is either an advertisement for something,
yes,
or it is No, man, I'm just having a brain collapse here. I apologize. There's another thing that it's used for. It's not done like an American cartoon would be.
No, no.
And I don't.
It's meant to sell a product. Many times, and this is one of the reasons why you ended up with shows that were short runs. Is, say, for example, we'll use I'll use Negima for an example.
Yep.
Or even I'll use Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicles. I'll even use some of the other shows that were around that time. Shows that were only licensed for an anime for 2 core or maybe 4 cores, and then that was it. They were done. They were licensed for the sole purpose of selling the manga.
Yep.
Or selling the figures.
Yep.
Just like in America. And I did a video on this a couple of years ago on my YouTube channel, where even there is a lot of that still does happen in America. For example, if you look at the My Little Pony franchise,
Well, yeah.
that the cartoon series was created for the sole purpose of selling the toys.
Yep.
And it absolutely worked.
Mhm.
When I did my short stint into the fandom, I had to order a blind buy rare figurine from Germany for $20.
Wow.
That it was a $1 blind buy bag, and I'm not joking. So these things they do happen like that. But then you get some shows that that go beyond that, and they develop cult status, and then it's not about necessarily pushing the manga anymore. It's about, okay, we need to keep feeding this fire because it is this thing that's all on its own. And so well, you could take One Piece, for example, Doraemon, or shows Detective Conan. Detective Conan doesn't need any help selling manga. Detective Conan doesn't need any help selling shows. There's a statue of Conan. I can't remember where it's at. There's an actual statue of Conan. So at a certain point, they do reach a life of their own. But what hurt the anime industry during the days when they were just using it as a means of promoting another product is you ran the risk of a show like Negima, though I'm not positive that that's what it was, where you would have a show, it would run its course, and then you would get OVAs, and you'd be like, oh yes, we're going to finally get more of the anime. But no, those OVAs were actually OVAs that were based on an arc in the manga.
Well, and it's actually worse because what you're talking about were the limited edition stuff for the manga.
The stuff that is packed only in the manga,
right? And will never be licensed in America, never,
ever. And it Oh My Goddess has had that happen.
Yep.
And it's this is where I feel like communication between the industry and the fans and the industry and the consumer definitely butted heads. But now we're seeing more shows, say, for example, like My Hero Academia, Attack on Titan, Overlord. We're seeing these shows that come in, and they're like, these shows are very popular, not only in the West, but they're also extremely popular in Japan. And the production companies are like, rather than just spit out a 2-core show and then we're done with it and hope that it's made its money back, let's take a break, analyze, see what's happening, and then greenlight another series. And so now you have these shows that sort of take a hiatus, and then they come back and they do it again. And now it's like just when you've almost forgotten about Overlord, or maybe you haven't, then they come back with another season, and you're like, oh boy, renewed interest, spike in sales, and it's a symbiosis that continues to push not only the anime, but it also pushes the sales of the other merchandise. And I really like that. I like that approach. I would much rather have a show take a break, like Dr. Stone is doing soon, and then come back with more stuff that isn't filler, that's dedicated to the manga, that's keeping it going. Let the author catch up a little bit. And I think that this is one of the things that's definitely lent itself to anime in the West, becoming a little bit more mainstream, because people now have something to look forward to. It isn't just a one-off. And let me read chat real quick. I got some chat blowing up.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Heart-shaped box says she was dropping a lurk while she goes to do her thing. Thank you very much, Heart-shaped box. Christo Pool says waiting for those thin pack and save releases. I will get into that. I will get into that. I have a thing about that. I don't have a problem with people buying those, but I do have a thing. Game Player S says stereotyping heavily. Hey, I'm only repeating what was once told to me. I once had a person come into my Xbox Live and send me a message, and just because my username was Western Otaku, straight up sent me a message calling me a weeb. And I'm like, what did I ever do to you? Call me a weeb. I thought it was funny. But then let's see. Chris Pool says, a lot of it is probably access. When your group was watching anime back in '96, someone had to buy the $25 VHS tapes. A decade later, anime has a strong foothold in cable. A decade later, you see internet streaming. And yes, that's where I'm headed next, is the internet streaming thing. Chris says, remember that mini cartoons US and Japan were for toys, Transformers, yes, He-Man, G.I. Joe, Thundercats, DC and Marvel cartoons were promoting the comics, etc. Absolutely. It's essentially, having worked in retail.
Well,
I can tell you it's called cross merchandising, and it works when it's done correctly.
And they are correct in pointing out those shows were clearly for advertising toys, obviously. But the difference, I think, here, and this is what my point was trying to be, was in Japan, anime is made by a production company. And that production committee, yes, and the production committee, thank you, and not they basically lose money, is what I've been told, on anime productions. There are exceptions, and yes, you run through some of these series. If a series picks up a life of its own in the anime sphere, where they start actually generating revenue from it, then the production committee will invest more money into it. But if it does not, then they're not going to do it. Unlike American animation, they aren't in that to lose money just to make some toy sales. They also want to make ad revenue off of G.I. Joe, off of My Little Pony, He-Man,
right?
Whatever. All these things were done, and then these things were sold into syndication, where they made more money. So the cartoons themselves were a product, not just to make toy sales, because technically you could say the Star Wars movies were done to make toy sales, because they always introduced new things with Star Wars to Empire Strikes Back to Return of the Jedi, with the sole purpose of selling more toys and more products. But those original things that they released were not there just purely as an ad. They were there for a story to tell. And unfortunately, there's just too many anime titles where that's not the case, even if they're done well. More recently, for American or Western, not just American, Western consumption, the Fate Grand Order series from the mobile game has a very long storyline. But they decided in Japan, they took a vote from the fans, and they said, okay, well, we only have so much money that's been allocated to us to make an anime. What do you want us to see animated? And because some production committee, that's all the money they were going to put up. Now, in my mind, that's just noodle doodle. That's just wacko whatever. In my mind, this franchise, in the right hands, done well, it's a Fate title, for crying out loud. Yes, some of the earlier stories can be a little bit kind of whacked, but, you could have... Anime adaptations, you and I both know, that sometimes they are not very faithful to the source material. And this would have been a perfect example or perfect time for Nasu to come in there and, make some fixes to the original game stories and make them so that they were more interesting. But I think they could have made a boatload of cash if they'd have started and redone the whole series from start to finish, instead of just going, okay, well, we're going to skip almost all the way to the end of the story, and you Westerners can get stuffed, and if you've never played the game, you can get stuffed. Then that's kind of been the attitude, and it's unfortunate. And that's the part that I think, if anime is going to continue to grow, that's an attitude in Japan and that exclusivity, we've talked about that
Right.
too, that these are very heavily ingrained in Japanese culture. And as some of the Japanese people have told me, you have to buy everything that they put out in Japan for a series to be a true fan of said series.
Right.
You have to just
And
do it.
not only that, but in Japan, I mean, I've looked over the what is like considered a bestseller.
Yep.
The top performing titles for X months or for whatever quarter, and there are the recurring ones that are the top performers when it comes to sales. Not only how well did they perform on network, but how well they performed on home video release,
Mhm.
and that has a huge impact because in Japan they don't put out 1 million copies
Right.
of a volume. They put out a limited amount, and if that sells through, they'll do more, maybe. Um, and the general attitude has never been we're going to go into this for the sole purpose of making a. It's not like Hollywood. Hollywood sits down and they're like, okay, they make a movie and it does relatively well, and they're like, okay, we're going to make 9 sequels. The Japanese don't sit down and do that. They don't sit down with the intention of making 9 seasons of a show.
Right.
It's a case by case thing, and it all hinges upon the fans and the fanatics, the quote unquote fanatics that buy every blessed loving thing to support that title. And if it's not there, I mean, just look at Shonen Jump, for example. It is one of the most cutthroat manga publishers in the world. New stuff comes in, and it's immediately out 4 weeks later. I mean, it's that cutthroat,
Right.
because there's just the demand for the time slots and the all of the availability. I think talking a little bit about the save sets, talking about the mainstream aspect of it,
Mhm.
going into that. The thing about anime, and this is something that to sometimes hit up Robert from Robert's Anime Corner Store whenever I had a question about the industry or I had something that I wanted to know about a specific title, if he had heard something that was coming through the pipeline. And this was years ago, back when he would actually personally respond to my emails. It was surprising how that even happened. I had a problem with one of my orders that I needed to make a change, and so I contacted customer support, and he himself actually emailed me back.
Right.
So since he did, I had like, I got an email address. I'm gonna make use of it.
Yes.
And I asked him a question about something that had to do with the anime industry, and I don't even remember what the specifics of it was, but I remember the answer that he gave me. The answer that he gave me was, when it comes to, and this is another thing that's different about America versus the Japanese economy, is in the American economy, they don't have as much to lose if an anime title goes bad. In the same sense, yes, it's a loss. They're going to take a loss on it, but you have to remember is the amount of money that, say, Funimation or Sentai Filmworks uses to procure a license is nowhere near the amount of money that the studio in Japan has spent to not only make it,
Right.
but to distribute it as well. So the difference there is if it's a slow selling title for Funimation, well, they'll just mark it down and slap it into a save set and make $20 off of it over the course of the next 2 years, and maybe they'll recur those resources or that money. And the thing about anime in America, or any title that gets released in stateside, is there is a 180-day shelf life. So let's take, for example, we'll take that time I got reincarnated as a slime. It came out last month. Now, from the date that that it's supposed to hit the street, its street date, 180 days later, the way the American economy, the American industry works, if that title has not recovered the money that they spent on it in those 3 months, it is considered a financial failure.
Right.
Absolutely. Everything Everything. When it hits a street date, you got 3 months to get those fans to buying it, to get those fans to wanting to pre-order it. And if it doesn't sell, if it doesn't make its money, it's a financial failure. And there's a lot of fans, and I'm hesitant to say this because it's going to sound mean-spirited, and I don't mean it the way that it's going to come off. But anime fans are oftentimes very young fans that don't have a disposable income.
That's correct.
Fans that don't have access to, $50 or $60 extra a month to go out and buy an anime. And so, unfortunately, I don't mean this to sound as mean as it's going to come off, but anime fans are probably some of the most broke fans ever for when it comes to having a hobby, because anime collecting is an expensive hobby.
Yep.
Anime buying is an expensive hobby. You can go bankrupt real fast when it comes to packing in those shelves of manga and plushies and action figures. The action figure market alone is outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
And for the fans that are like, and I used to be one, I used to say, oh, well, I'm just going to wait until that collectible, that thin pack box set comes out for $30 because I don't have the $120 to spend on the individual volumes as they're coming out. And I think that where we're seeing anime now with the streaming services is that's all pretty much a thing of the past. As long as the company maintains a license for streaming, and it's my understanding that it's a lot easier to get a streaming license than it is to get a physical release license. It's essentially they're just raking in money at that point. Now, granted, it doesn't come down to individual focus on a particular show because they're not making. They're not making $20 a pop, $30 a pop off of selling a unit of anime. They're selling a bundled package of anime. So the idea now is they have to keep the fans on the streaming platform and watching the streaming platform. And so with this access, this direction that the anime industry has taken, this is also, I think, going to lend itself into anime becoming way more mainstream because now you've got HIDIVE, which is a very new anime streaming platform, which I definitely am behind and I support. You have Crunchyroll, which is, for all the good and bad that gets thrown at them, they've been around for a long time. Nico Nico. I think there's another one called Toku, I think. Now you've got Netflix, who are actively throwing money at anime because they realize, like your friend, that in the next 10 years, anime is going to be a big thing. I mean, for us, it's a big thing. But I think Netflix is looking ahead going, anime is going to be a big market. Anime is going to be a big market in the next 10 years. And I think a couple of years ago, it was announced that they had set aside something like 8 billion or 8 million. I don't remember. There was a huge number that Netflix had put aside to produce or have Japanese studios produce anime. And for everybody out there who thinks that Netflix makes the anime, they do not make the anime. Don't blame Netflix. There's no Netflix studio where Japanese guys and girls are sitting there drawing the anime. They pay an actual Japanese company to make it. So
well, this is you've tied in into what my earlier thought was, that the Japanese industry has to change to some degree.
And I'm going to get to a point of that, so remind me.
You are getting there, though, is that Netflix and Funimation with the recent Fruits Basket reboot or reimage, or whatever you want to call it, remake from the start. Yeah. They are actually part of the production committee, so they are actually funding what is being put out in Japan. I think more of that is going to need to go on.
Yes. Now, I don't know if you're aware. I made a video talking about it, and of course that video is not on YouTube right now, so I can't link to it. But are you familiar with an individual? And I know there's probably a couple in my chat that are. You're familiar with an individual named Danny Chu?
Its name sounds vaguely familiar to me.
Danny Chu is he's sort of an entrepreneur. He used to work for Amazon. Had a job for Microsoft for a short time. He's a He's a definite forward thinker. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I want to say he's not native Japanese, but he more or less adopted the Japanese people and just became really big. Daisuke, that's another one I'm thinking of. Thank you, Game Player. Sony owned Crackle. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are starting to really tap into that anime streaming market. Danny Chu came in and fell in love with Japan, fell in love with the culture. Yeah, Dancing Stormtrooper. Lurky Turkey, thank you, Heart Shape, for the lurk. Danny Chu fell in love with the language and he wanted to share Japanese culture. So he created a concept. He created flashcards, and he had a series of cute anime girls created called Mirai. Mirai was, I think, the first girl that was created for his product, and from that spread into him being this driving force for tourism in Japan. So much so that his character Mirai became the official mascot of the Japanese tourist industry. And he even went on from there. They made an anime based off of these characters, and then they were like, well, we want to create figures. And he's like, well, if we're going to make figures, I want to make high quality figures. And I have one, and I'll show her off right now. This is Kanata. She is an imported Japanese ball joint doll that was created by Danny Chu's company, Culture Japan, and very expensive, by the way, very expensive. And there's no sellbacks. Once you buy one, you're stuck with her for life. I love Kanata. She's definitely my personal mascot, and she overlooks my entire room. So you come in here, you better behave yourself. But from there, he became part of a board, a Japanese committee, because there's a committee for everything in Japan. He got put on the Cool Japan committee. And what the Cool Japan Committee is it was a government-initiated program that was designed to promote Japan culturally. And how they were going to do that was several steps. And I could find some links if you want to read over them later, Astro, in your private time.
Yeah, sure.
And what it is a government-initiated plan, several parts where they're going to promote not only tourism, they're going to promote what makes Japanese to the rest of the world. And one of the ways that they were going to do that was they were going to start shaking hands with foreign companies to encourage these foreign markets to, start selling makeups, apparels, entertainment, and on there, manga anime, and gaming. They've already reached a point this year. The Cool Japan initiative had what was called a Cool Japan Fund, and they gave $20 million to Sentai Filmworks. They gave them $20 million and basically stepped in and said, okay, it's time. We're ready to open up our market more, and we like what you're doing. Congratulations, you're in. You're going to be one of the companies that we're going to work with to start spreading the gospel of Japanese pop culture around the world. Now, I don't know what all is going to be involved in that. I don't know if that means that Sentai Filmworks is going to suddenly start getting this massive surge of titles from Japan. But this is definitely one of the steps that the Cool Japan Initiative is taking. And they're also, it's not just to push the industry outward as an export, but they want to bring people into Japan to experience culture as a mecca, because they realize that everyone, they did a survey, everyone agrees that when it comes to distinctive pop culture, Japan has the market cornered. And so what you were saying was that Japan needs to open up a little bit more and stop being so insular, is how I was taking it. And I think that this is the push that's about to happen. So I think that companies like Netflix, they were on the fringe cusp of that, and their marketing people must have perceived that this was going to happen. because now you're going to start seeing, I think, over the next 10 years, way more titles, way more involvement with American companies and Japanese industry, and hopefully it isn't mediated by some third party like Aniplex of America that could literally sit down and determine what the cost of our anime is. Because if that's the case, I can't afford anime anymore, because Aniplex of America are just they're god awful prices. Their approach to anime is the same as it is in Japan. And I'm sorry to say, the cost of living in Japan is way different than it is in America.
Yeah, years ago, and I was going to do a blog piece on this, but I said, nah, you know what? I'm too angry. I'm going to say ugly things probably if I write this. But on Twitter, some Japanese he writes in publications in Japan for the manga and anime. And he went off on me in English and told me that we Americans did not appreciate anime because we were not willing to pay the same prices that Japanese fans did. And it was outrageous that we wanted multiple episodes per DVD, that we wanted them for a cheap price. And that was just not how things are done in Japan. And therefore, we cannot be true fans.
And thank you very much for the host. Seriously, Izzy. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. So the my response back was, okay, look, this is America. Okay, now I'm not trying to say America, is the best. Although I love
that's what we got. We worked with what we had. Had the American anime industry started off selling anime, and you know what? I'm sure there are some fans in the chat that can remember when VHS tapes had 2 episodes, and they were how much?
Yes.
How much outrageous. Were they? Yeah.
I mean, wow, good grief. I can't remember. Like $40, I want to say. 50 maybe. For a tape. For a single tape with 2 episodes on it.
So we worked with what we had. Had the anime industry in America been, okay, guys, sorry, you get 2 episodes on a DVD and it's $40, we would have had to have made do. I mean, I recall some shows that were 7 discs, and I'm like, oh my God, they're milking this one. 7 discs, and I'll give you an example. For Full Metal Panic, 7-disc set from ADV. The first disc had 4 or 5 episodes, and the rest of them had 3 episodes. 3 episodes, and it was $29.95. Okay? So, I mean, we still had to pay.
Right. Well, and it's like Game Player S in the chat says that Aniplex's approach is basically to ignore the market collapse of the late 2000s that saw the collapse of more expensive anime publishers here in the U.S. And that's true. Aniplex is not doing that. The American market is not the Japanese market. We do not have this mindset of the only way we can be a true fan is to pay to buy everything for product X and to pay whatever price, even if that means starving to death.
Exactly.
And that is not our mentality. That is a Japanese mentality. That is not an American mentality. Because guess what? We're spoiled for choice in America.
Right.
There's just tons and tons and tons of entertainment today, especially.
I want somebody to tell me how many anime streaming sites there are in Japan. I can't even tell you.
I don't think it's very many. Akamatsu Sensei, not just on streaming, but on digital manga. Because their
how
mindset
hard was that to get into?
And they still hate it.
You had to it was like pulling, as my dad was fond of saying, it was like pulling chicken's teeth, getting the Japanese to agree to digital anything, because. Yes. And I'm not. This isn't me dogging the Japanese people. This is me dogging the Japanese industry.
Yep.
So when I say the Japanese, I mean the Japanese anime and manga industry. They were a bunch of old suits that only dealt in absolutes, and they dealt in physical product. That's all they knew. Physical units. This equaled profit. That.
Yes, it was something they could quantitate on a balance sheet, and I get that Japan has the loss of face culture, And so, no one wants to lose face. Therefore, you do what you know. You don't take risk. You don't go out on a limb. You don't try anything new. You do have those pioneers.
And this is why we have constant shows that reiterate the same the same plot over and over again, because it's safe.
Yes.
It's a comfort zone.
Yes, and they do not like going out of their comfort zone, because if you go out and you fail, you lose face, and that's worse than death. So I get that. I do get that. Having lived in Japan for a couple of years, I understand that. But but that mindset is, you have some of your forward thinkers. Regardless of what you feel about how Negima ended or UQ Holder, I mean, Akamatsu Sensei has been out there trying to get the industry to push forward into tomorrow, because it's like you cannot just rely on what used to be, because if you just do that, you're gonna fall apart. And like Game Player S was saying, look how many big companies in America, production companies that you just never would have thought would have gone. Was it Genion, however they pronounce it? What Pioneer
Genion
turned into?
Yeah.
ADV. Who else did you have? There were quite a few.
It was definite overreach. In the case of ADV, there was some, I want to say, some internal sabotage that happened on the Japanese end. And there was a whole thing that happened as a result of that, and Funimation stepping in and basically saying, look, we realize that ADV, and this was one of the first inclinations of problems that I personally had with Funimation as a company, was they saw an opportunity to swoop in, gather up the licenses that ADV couldn't pay for. They acquired them from Sojitz, and then they basically said, oh, look, ADV owes you X amount of money that they can't pay for. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pay you, and we're going to assume that debt, and we'll go after ADV as if it's our debt. And so then there was a whole lawsuit that happened when Funimation decided to sue ADV for them coming in and basically picking up all of their licenses for cheap and assuming the debt. And that was kind of a very low blow, and it was a very dark time in the American anime industry, and there was the apocalypse is upon us. But yeah, Game Player S says Pioneer, Genion, Bandai, Central Park Media,
Yep.
Anime Works. I feel like it was basically it was too much too soon. They personally, what usually kills a company, in my opinion, is always overreach. You're like, okay, well, to give you some context. I worked for an accounting office. I worked for the administrative office of one of America's fast food industries. This was bought into the franchise, and then you managed them. And so my job was, I worked in the accounting department of one of the guys who bought into the franchises. And every time this owner would open a new fast food restaurant, he was immediately in debt, $600,000 to $800,000. Open the brand new fast food chain in debt. And the idea was, and this is a weird mentality, and I think this is very American, is that's okay, because what you do is you just keep financing that debt. You just keep having it refinanced, and you just keep it going for the duration, and hope that you don't have to close your doors, because when it's all said and done, then the check is due. And I think that for a lot of anime companies in America, this sort of mentality was there too. It's okay, we're going to continue to acquire all of these titles. It's going to put us in debt, and we're just going to keep assuming that debt, and we're going to keep rolling it over, because, what is it called? Amortization and all of that. We're going to just keep it on the long term, and we're going to keep acquiring, because as long as we're making money, we can still make a profit and still be in debt. And it's a weird way that works, economically speaking, how you can be in debt $600,000 and still have money to pay your employees. And it eventually will lead to a collapse. And I think that's part of the reason why ADV went under. I think it's part of the reason why Media Blasters went under. It's definitely one of the reasons why I think that Bandai went under. Is because they made real bad decisions when it came to what they were going to license, as opposed to a company like Funimation, who knows, and this is not me slighting Funimation in the least, Funimation knows exactly what side of the bread is buttered. Okay? They know exactly what their fans want to see. And I'm going to tell you right now, the majority of the fans that go to Funimation know they're going to get two things. They're going to get the boobies and the panties. And it sells. Absolutely. I always get a little grin in the corner of my face, the corner of my mouth, whenever I see the new acquired license announcements from Funimation, and I'm looking because in the back of my mind, when a new show comes out, I'm like, I bet that's going to be what Funimation's going to get. And sure enough, they licensed it.
That used to be ADV shtick.
Oh my gosh, was it? Was it ever? Oh, was it?
So yeah, I don't know. I just but going back to what we were, started all this in the industry and stuff. And it's funny you mentioned Aniplex, because they're the ones that are doing the Fate Grand Order anime.
Yep.
But if you're taking Western audiences into consideration, you can't just jump into the end of a storyline, and because that kind of killed the series in America or in the West. Because if you weren't a game player, you have no idea. Yeah, they do some flashbacks, but they don't have the weight or meaning that they would if they'd been doing the whole series. And I think that's something that's going to have to change. But yeah, Aniplex, so them and their pricing schemes are just nuts.
And the thing is that they never go on sale either.
No, because there's no such thing as a sale. You're supposed to just pay for whatever.
They just sell out, and then there's no more. And it's like, wait a minute. If you at least made, and this is one thing that I am grateful for. I am grateful for this. This may be a step in this direction. This month, I think within the next week, Kill La Kill is actually getting, hold your breath, wait for it, they're actually getting a re-release in a complete, cheaper box set.
Wow.
I'm not joking. I'm not making it up. And this is not... they're actually doing it. They released Kill La Kill in 5 parts on Blu-ray, both a limited edition and a standard edition. Okay, and their official seller was Right Stuff. Of course, Right Stuff, you can't really compete with Right Stuff. SAO too. SAO is getting a re-release. But what they did was, if you paid I think $50 to $60 for the limited edition sets for Kill La Kill, I mean, that was what, 50, let's just say $50,
mm-hmm.
50 times 5. That's what you were going to end up paying. And now it's a little over $100 for the Blu-ray. It's still not cheap, but there is one silver lining to Aniplex as a company. Aniplex as a company does one thing that no other American company does.
Drum roll.
They have superior quality product. Their discs, I've compared, because I have a couple of Aniplex and I have a couple of NIS America Blu-ray. You open that Blu-ray up, it is the same level of quality of mastering and pressing that you would get if you lived in Japan. You're getting the highest quality bit rate, encoding, and you put it in your Blu-ray player. You never have to worry about artifacting or banding or anything like that. You're getting a superior product but you're paying for it. You're
Right.
definitely paying out the nose for it. So I hope that with this handshake that Aniplex has between Sony and Funimation, I hope that we're going to start seeing more influence from Funimation going, hey, you could sell more product if you bundled it together after about a year or two and then marketed it like that, because then you could not only keep it going, you could still be making a profit off of it rather than going, oh God, we need to make a profit right now. Let's sell each one of them for $100 because we don't know if we're going to press anymore. No. Take a gamble. Press some more. Make some more pressings. Put out some more editions. People will buy it.
Yep, I agree, and that's something that the Japanese don't understand. I don't think is the secondary market.
No,
we just that is a very common thing, both on broadcasting with the old school syndication, and in modern times, where okay, sure, the title was released originally on DVD or now Blu-ray. With all the bells and whistles, but then later on it'll get re-released without all the bells and whistles for a lot cheaper price because they're picking up a secondary market, that market that doesn't have that disposable income to pay that higher price. And the same thing on anime. It's like, you get these package deals and they're really good for the consumer. They really are. You get more bang for your buck if you're just all you're interested in is just watching a series and maybe having it to watch whenever you want. And that's a market that the Japanese just don't understand because, well, you're not a true fan.
Right.
You got to drop that idea because, yeah, we're about, we just have a different way of seeing things than they do in Japan. So I don't know, but it's amazing to see how anime has grown over the years, from those early days when there was just hardly anything there. And if you wanted to watch anime, you were getting 8th generation copies of a VHS tape fan sub.
Oh, I've got a very rare treat. I was given a I don't want to call it a demo tape, but it was more of a it was an early fan dub VHS tape.
Oh wow.
That was produced by a certain anime club in college, and most of the people that were in the fan dub actually went on to become industry VAs.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most personally valuable things I've got in my collection. And it was gifted to me by a very special friend. And I was like, wow, I have no idea who I'm listening to, but this is the greatest thing I've ever heard. Because they were just having fun with it. I mean, we're talking some crazy stuff. I mean, it was off-the-wall comedy that only College Humor could have.
Right.
And you're watching like an episode of like a classic 90s anime, and it's just, you're hearing things like, wow. So it's funny when you see the evolution of an industry like that. And who would have thought 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when anime was making its way into the West, that we would be here now speculating on things like the longevity of titles, the economy. I refer to the anime industry in America as a macro economy. It is an economy all on its own that exists within an economy of the American industry. Because anime being in a niche market the way that it is, it has several what is the word I'm looking for? Shifts in its lifespan, and it goes from being new, and it can go from being new to old to cheap to out of print to valuable again, in demand again, and then be licensed, rescued, and be popular again. Right. So you can have a show literally start off like, say, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and be at the height of its popularity back in the early 2000s. And then suddenly you see its slow decline, then you see it go out of print, and you see it literally die. Then you see it suddenly become valuable for the fact that then you have a collectible market.
Yep.
And as a collector of out of print and rare anime, I can tell you it is a brutal, methodical system of going through and trying to weed through the BS when you're trying to find a decent copy of something, and you know this person is selling that one volume of, say, I'll give you an example. The Blu-ray DVD combo limited edition of the Tenchi movies that
Right.
Funimation they released. $500 new in package on eBay. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And you see everybody else selling it for $100, and you're still like, are you kidding me? I managed to snag mine for a little over $20 new in the wrapper, and believe me, that was a steal. Somebody needs to come and make sure that I wasn't dreaming, and that the person wasn't completely bonkers when they sold it to me for that. Because anime is one of the few things, like it's become sort of like trading cards. It's become sort of like rare comic books. Once it goes out of print, then it goes into a whole nother metamorphosis, into another lifespan as an out of print title. And then you have the collectors come in going, yes. And so now you have collectors, and like myself, who have a wall of anime behind them, and they have 2 shelves of out of print DVDs going, yes. I'm not going to lie. There's a little bit of clout. There's a little bit of clout that goes with being able to show off all your rare and out of print titles. It's kind of like having a museum that represents the era of anime in which these were made, because I can look back and go, that's Animego, that's Central Park Media, that's a rare Bandai title, and I can tell you the history of that anime, and it's so weird that anime can do that. Manga doesn't do that. You can't do that with manga. You can't do that with J-pop soundtracks. You can't do that with anything else. And of course, the Game Player says we fear selling anything anymore because of how crazy expensive stuff goes for when it goes out of print and has no re-release. And every time you buy something, you take the risk, you take the gamble that 1 week later some company isn't going to relicense it. You're going to spend $200. You're going to spend $200 on an anime set, and then a month later, Funimation has announced that they've licensed it, they've licensed Rescued It, and they're going to put out a Blu-ray of it for $40. And you're sitting here going, wow, I guess I get to look at my $200 out of print, now defunct set. That's probably the biggest fear I think that collectors have. And speaking of physical collections, Astro, do you have physical collections of anime? Do you collect at all?
Oh yes, I've got I've got more stuff than I've got actual. Well, I actually bought 3 brand new shelving units when I redid my office, and I still have yet to get all the shelves organized in my office. But and I need to get the shelves in my bedroom reorganized as well. But yeah, I have one of those old school entertainment centers from back before widescreen TVs became popular, and it has literally the whole thing is just packed to the gills with anime titles, including quite a lot that I've just never gotten around to watching. I mean, it's sad, but it's a time thing.
It definitely is.
And the same thing with manga. Now manga actually probably has overtaken the anime, just because I just keep buying stuff, and I've got stacks and stacks of manga that I'm behind on reading. So yeah, I do collect. Where I don't collect is basically beyond the physical media, and I just like the physical media because that way I can rewatch Van Dread, for example, whenever I want, or Handmaid May. These are not titles that I don't think you can stream them anywhere, probably. I don't think. And actually, I've never looked, but I doubt you
Uh,
can actually stream them. But I
I'm
can
not
rewatch
sure
them
myself.
anytime you can. I mean,
Right.
anytime you want. And the same thing with manga. I can reread it anytime I want. And so I tend to, that's where I tend to spend my money collector wise. So yeah, I do have a lot of that stuff. I do have a tiny, and I mean tiny amount of other collectibles. I got, speaking of Van Dread, I was fairly new in anime and was gushing about it, whatever office I was working at. And so for the Christmas, they bought me a figure of one of the characters. I can't remember her name now. God, my memory sucks. But so yeah, and that was not a cheap gift. I was like stunned. It was like, wow, that's actually quite cool. So I do have that, and then my company one time gave me a gift card, and I bought a Fruits Basket anime poster framed, and but that's the only non physical media collections that I have for anime. Everything else is just it's either manga or the DVDs or Blu-rays
Now,
nowadays.
speaking of collecting, um, at a certain point, I had to make a priority over what I was going to start collecting. Now, we talked a little bit. Well, I say a little bit. We talked yesterday uh, at length, and I told you that I was a huge cinephile and that I'm a huge movie buff, and I have a massive amount of movies as well as anime and manga. But at a certain point, I had to give precedent to something. I had to say, okay, um, since I'm so slow at reading manga, I'm going to discontinue purchasing manga unless it's something that's just it stands out a whole lot. So for my manga and for my light novels, I've actually gone digital, and I hate the idea. Let me explain this. I don't like digital streaming media, and I'll tell you why. Um, if I buy something, granted, according to the terms of service, because believe it or not, when you buy a product, until that company goes out of until that company goes defunct, you're essentially leasing the right to view that title in your home for the duration of the time that you own it. And you also have the ability to resell it or whatever. But it's a one time purchase license agreement between you and the company. And that's why the FBI warning says this is licensed for home viewing only and blah 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 blah. And that's essentially what that means. You buy a lifetime license between you and the people who made that disc. But for all intents and purposes, you own it. It's a physical media. You can watch it anytime you want to. Nobody that I know of in the history of forever has ever violated their lifetime license with a company where Warner Brothers or Paramount has come out on the door and says, I'm sorry, Dave. You've messed up. We're gonna have to confiscate. You can no longer have your copy of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You're done with it. We're taking it back. That's in the history of forever. I don't think this ever happened. Hang on one second. Ducky14 asks, "What's your favorite anime show?" I get that asked a lot, and right now, I would have to say it changes. It changes seasonally. It changes year by year. But right now, one of my favorite anime shows is definitely the Monogatari series. Started with Baka Monogatari, and I just started working my way through it. It's a really good series. It's fantastic. It has got groundbreaking animation and real compelling storytelling. So you can watch most of it on Crunchyroll, or I think even what I consider SpongeBob anime.
No.
That's only
Back.
only if there was an episode where they went to Japan, when I might consider it.
Now, SpongeBob is fine. That does not belittle SpongeBob, but yeah, it is not anime. My favorite anime, Ducky, is Tenchi Muyo, the original 2 OVA series, OVA 1 and OVA 2. So
now, what was I saying? So anyway, in the history of forever, no one's ever come back and confiscated your copy of a movie.
Yep.
Now, when you sign up to a streaming site and you say, let's just say, you let's take Xbox Live for example, or PlayStation Network. I've bought seasons of shows, so that I could stream them as they're happening. Like for example, The Walking Dead. I don't have cable, so how I watch it is when a new season starts, I go to Sony, I go to PlayStation, I go to the store, I buy the season, and then as the episodes come out, I watch them that night, within about an hour or two. Now, I own those, I think, but I really don't. Sony owns those. I'm paying for an extended license that allows me to access that show for as long as I maintain good standing with the PlayStation Network. The minute I violate their terms of service, I no longer have access to stuff that I have personally paid for. I think I've bought it, but they're not going to mail me a Blu-ray in the mail that says, okay, thank you, David, for your time with us. We appreciate your years of being a member of the PlayStation Network. Here's all the stuff that you've bought. You can't stream it anymore, but here you go. Here it is. That doesn't work that way. I lose everything I purchased, whether it's $10 worth of something or it's $10,000 worth of something. And that is the big thing that I hate about streaming digital services is your access is all contingent upon your maintaining good standing with that company. Whether it's Xbox Live, whether it's PlayStation, whether it's Funimation, whether it's High Dive, you violate their terms of service and you get banned. It doesn't matter how much digital video on demand you've bought, you've lost it. But you know what? As a collector with a physical copy, you don't.
Yep.
You know, if the
Yours
world
forever.
were to go, if the zombie apocalypse were to happen tomorrow, I would be set. I would be able to go get a portable generator, and I would be the guy over here with one lamp and a mini fridge watching Bleach on my DVD player, okay?
Or Naruto.
Or Naruto. And to answer your question, Ducky14, how do I feel about Naruto? I liked it. I've seen all of it, and Naruto Shippuden. I feel that it can be overrated. I feel like it's overhyped.
Yes, that's
Definitely
there.
But I feel like for people who enjoy that type of a story, that it is very good.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I apologize, Western.
Oh, no.
My own 2 cents on that about Naruto is that it has a legitimate place within anime. Now, I have never watched a single episode. My nephews love it, and there are people that I know who love it, who are older anime fans. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. I will not belittle anyone who loves it, but I do think it gets a little too overhyped. But I would not say overrated. I think that's a more subjective thing, wouldn't you say? Kind of.
Yeah,
but it does
definitely.
get a lot of hype that, it's a shonen title. It's just it's a traditional cliched shonen title. And like I said, those have a place in the market for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's too deep of a question for me to answer in the short amount of time that I have. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll pass on that.
Now, do you think that, and this is probably the last question I have, or should I say talking point, with everything going streaming now, and I showed you, well, I don't know if you saw, but I showed the list of 130 shows that were created this year. I could honestly say that I bet most of those are licensed somewhere. I would say that now, if there is an anime title that isn't licensed by a company or a streaming service, it's in the minority. So it's like the other day, the other day, I say the other day, a couple of months ago, I made a video talking about um, anime, what is it? How did I word it? Hidden gems, anime hidden gems. And I went back through the years and I noticed that a lot of them that I had were, pre 2000, a lot of older titles.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first came into the anime fandom, that because of the availability of anime, or even the availability of manga, and I think that you could still say that about manga, because try as they might, I don't think any anime or manga publishing company in America is ever going to be able to publish everything. It's just so prolific in Japan at this point. It's staggering the amount of manga that gets churned out on a near weekly basis there. But when it comes to anime, you could literally say, you could go and find an anime and go, wow, I didn't know this existed. And you could talk to somebody and say, hey, did you know this is that I know? I didn't know there was such an anime. And then you could, you have found this rare hidden gem that no one has ever heard of before.
Right.
But now that doesn't happen. Hidden gems, just somebody has already watched it. Somebody has already put a review out on it. Somebody has probably made an Astro Nerd Boy blog about it. I think gone are the days of that wow factor of stumbling through and finding a title and going, wow.
I'm not sure I totally agree there. I'll tell you why. Take a case in point. Let me get the official Seven Seas title name for this. Give me a second. Blah, blah, da, 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 da. Yes, I'm prepared for these things. Nicola. I think it's Nicola traveling through the demon world.
Uh-huh.
I would consider that a little gem. Now, yes, Seven Seas discovered it, and so they licensed it. Yeah, Nicola traveling around the demon's world.
Now, that's a manga, right?
That is a manga title. But see, I would classify that in the gem category because it's not a big name title, It's not your traditional... it's out of the mainstream in terms of it's not an isekai title. It's not a harem title. It's not a boobies title like you were talking about. I mean, it is a young girl, and the art style is not even traditional manga. It is a more European style artwork, but it is definitely a Japanese manga title about a young human witch traveling through the demon world, Makai, with an elf-looking dude who's, they're calling a demon. Now, see, to me, that is a gem. And I don't know that a lot of people, because Seven Seas isn't like heavily promoting this.
No,
I don't. So to me, I think they're still tight. Just not. Go ahead.
That's on the manga side. I'm talking about the anime side of things, with so many titles being licensed there. Because I said, with so many manga being published, I think you can still find a hidden gem or three.
Okay.
Yeah, I was talking about the anime side of things.
I thought you were talking about both. Okay.
No. With so much stuff being streamed, you can't, when you say recommend me a good anime, you're not gonna have somebody come in. I don't feel, this is just me, I don't feel like you're gonna have somebody come in and go, oh, this show, no one's watched it, you should watch it. And it's like, now everything gets watched. I mean, if you go through the new season is about to start. The new winter season is about to start, and I promise you, everything that gets streamed is going to get watched.
Yep.
Everything that gets licensed is going to get watched. No one's going to pass it by. 3 months from now, unless you're just unlucky enough to be one of those people that can't watch everything, you're going to go like, oh, hey, wow, I found this great anime. And they're going to be like, calm down, bro. Calm down.
Yeah.
we know about it. Where have you been?
Yeah, that was yesterday's news.
Yeah, I've been in the back of the bus. You need to come to the front of the bus. That's where all the good stuff is. I feel like that's the only drawback to me as an anime fan, is that I miss the days when I could show up to someplace and go, recommend me a hidden gem, and they would spout off some Japanese only title that was never translated, and it's I will give you a perfect example. I'll give you a perfect example of a hidden gem that I never knew existed, but this is not a new title. Let me let me see if I can remember the name of it.
While you're looking for that, Lucky7 says Tenchi Muyo was sort of my hidden gem. When I bought those VHS tapes, I honestly had never heard of it before, never seen any mention of it anywhere. Well, of course, that is back in the day too, if you were buying VHS tapes. So technically speaking, yeah. But yeah, what Western's talking about is the advent of streaming has basically killed the hidden gem, because I mean, now there's a website and I go to it every year, AniChart, and I look to see, okay, what are all the anime titles coming out in the upcoming
exactly
season. So you know everything that's coming out, whether it's on broadcast, OVA, movie, web, whatever. There are no secrets anymore to surprise us. So, you know,
there was I can't remember the name of it. I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me. It's a, maybe you can remember what I'm talking about. It's an OVA. It's a 4-part OVA. It never got licensed in America, but there was a manga, and I've read the whole manga. Actually, it's the most recent manga that I've read. It takes place in a post-apocalyptic world in Japan, and there's an android girl who basically just runs a coffee shop, and I can't remember the name of it now. Let me you know what, let me go to my, because I asked someone about it. Let me go to my Twitter here. I can tell you, here's me being unprepared. I gotta go to my messages here. I gotta go back a ways. Are
you talking about, okay, I think I may have it here. Yokohama shopping log?
I think that might be it.
The plot is a set in a peaceful post cataclysmic world where mankind is in decline after an environmental disaster. Blah blah blah. Looks like she runs a coffee shop.
Yes, that would be it.
Yes,
that would be it. That
came out
was
in 98.
The most 98.
Well, the manga came out in 94. The anime came out in 98.
Right. That is the most recent hidden gem that I knew about. And I was going through randomly on YouTube, and I came across a Anituber who did a review on it. And they said that this was quite possibly one of the most relaxing anime they had ever watched. And that hooked me. So I watched their review. And immediately I had to go seek out this show.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very rare that I do that. But, we're talking, while I was watching his review, I started looking this up. And then I discovered the manga. Hey, thank you so much for the follow, Niga2838. Thank you so much. So I went out and found this, and I watched it. Now, this was, to my knowledge, never licensed in America.
No, it wasn't.
The manga, I don't think, was ever licensed in America. But so if you find it, it's kind of a swim at your own risk type of a thing, is the only thing I can tell you. But it's worth it. And this is a hidden gem. But this is something from the 90s, okay? That sort of excitement about finding something that I don't think a lot of people had ever seen. I mean, I hit up Game Player S. I said, have you heard of this? He's like, no. I hit up other people that I knew. Have you heard of this? They're like, no. And I'm like, wow, that sense of I found something that not a lot of people have seen before. And then I had to share it.
You know what's kind of funny? I actually recognized the artwork because it was in Afternoon Magazine, and that was where My Goddess was published. So I actually used to own quite a few copies of Afternoon Magazine. So when I saw the cover of the manga volume, I was like, oh wait, I remember seeing
Can
this.
you float me a link to a cover if you've got one in Discord, and I can I can post it. Then I can pull it up and show it on my stream.
Yeah, we can do that, or I can put it in chat, either or. But I'll put it in Discord here. Actually, I'm going from the Wikipedia, and it actually is showing volume 1.
Okay, let me copy the link here, and I will put it up in my browser for all to see.
But here's the deal, and this is going to the modern technologies. We have all this streaming, we have all this, even with Crunchyroll, as terrible as they are with it, but they have the manga that are sorry, the image is so small.
That's all right.
Where you can, it's not streaming with a manga, right? But it's digital form where you have access as long as you pay for the monthly fee. See, a title like this, in my mind, is one that, okay, it's old. You're probably not going to sell a lot of physical copies, but at least have some digital copies out there, of the manga, of the anime, and
yeah, exactly. I think there is, and I've said this over and over again, and I've put up a big picture there. Beautiful. It is the story. The story is beautiful, and I don't say that about a lot of things, because I'm a hardened dude, but this is probably one of the most beautiful stories I've ever read and ever watched, and it's all told from this simple, not childlike, but simple awe. Seeing this post-apocalyptic world with still a sense of awe and wonder from the eyes of a machine, of an android, and it actually takes place over multiple decades. When you finish reading the manga, something like 40 years has passed, and it's beautiful. It's amazing. And I've said this over and over again. If I ever had the money, if I could ever do it, I would create a company whose sole purpose was to recover and preserve classic anime and manga. The stuff that nobody else wants to touch. If it has to be done either sub only because of cost constraints or streaming only, then so be it. But I think that there's a desire for this stuff that's just been overlooked. I mean, when I got into anime, I was so convinced that the majority of it was just giant space battle mecha that, it was all Robotech and Gundam. And it's so much more than that. And looking back now, I actually wish I had gotten into Gundam and Robotech and Southern Cross.
Yep.
And shows like that. I wish that I had given them a shot, because now it, as a person who wants the next big thing, I'm always looking forward, but I'm very rarely looking backward. And so when you do come across one of these quote unquote hidden gems, it really hits the nostalgic factor and takes you back to those early moments of your fandom. And I feel like that's probably something that I feel like we're going to sacrifice now, as we keep getting reiterations of, in X world fighting a demon lord, or
opening a pizza shop in a demon world.
Exactly. Some restaurant in another world. And it's, it's gone. I think gone are the days of people have finally, their voices have finally been heard. Gone are the moe, the advent of moe vision. Now we're in the era of the isekai invasion. But I am a huge fan of isekai, so I don't mind it, and I'll even watch the bad stuff. I'm gonna miss those days whenever you could find a current anime gem and then be like, yeah, I'm the only one who knows about it,
Right. Yeah. I can see that. I mean, it doesn't hit me kind of, I guess, the same way, but But then I would guess, but between us, that you've probably watched and read more things than I have. I mean, I've watched and read a lot, but there's a ton of things that I've never watched or read. Now then you've got me curious about this, and
Oh yeah.
there is a way to read this through, shall we say, alternative methods.
Oh yeah, there is. Um, but I would also recommend if you could find the OVAs to give them a look as well. They're sort of cherry picked,
Mhm.
and
Looks
but
like
they're
there's 4
cherry
total episodes. Yeah.
yeah, but they're cherry picked in such a way that they do a really good job of still conveying the essence of what the manga is about. So I don't really mind the fact that it was limited to only 4 episodes, but I just really feel like I mean, if I were granted, I don't think we could ever hope that something like this would get a reboot.
Right.
But I
probably
think
not.
that it would definitely, if this were made, if the OVA had ever made it to the point where a committee said, you know what, we're going to go ahead and give this a full series, at the time that this was going, it probably would have gotten a 52 episode anime. And that's another thing about early anime is that, as opposed to now, you had a lot of companies that were way more willing to create an anime show that ran for 100+ episodes. I mean, look at shows like Urusei Yatsuda, or what is it, Orange Road, for example. Well, it wasn't over 100, but I mean, it was very lengthy. And you had shows like, oh my gosh, Dr. Slump, for example, was over 200 episodes. And now studios, well, I mean, think about it. You had less anime being produced, so I guess they had the liberty, the freedom, the lack of competition to create a show and flesh it out for as long as they wanted to. Dragon Ball Z, and these shows ran for a long time.
Well, and they were
Now,
willing to take a risk too back then. I mean, Gundam was a massive risk. I mean, it actually NHK had a documentary for their world audiences, so it's in English. Although they've pulled all the online copies, I wish they would allow them to be up. But that aside, the original Gundam. Now it was quite a long series. It was like a year-long series, but they actually scaled it back somewhat just because it wasn't doing so well in the ratings. But because they gave it the chance, look what a massive franchise that became in Japan.
oh, I know.
today.
There's a new Gundam every year almost.
Yep, and it's just hilarious to me because if Gundam was started today, based on how it started in Japan back in the 70s, wasn't
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it
when
was
the original?
1972.
That it would just it would have been like, okay, 12 episodes, that's it, done, gone.
Let me read chat real quick. Let's see. I don't know if you read this. Christopher says, plus technology has allowed the creators to make more faster. How much is still hand drawn? I think only key animation is hand drawn in the sense that it's hand drawn on digital interfaces. There is still the hand drawn aspect of it, but the technology it's no more pencil and paper. So it's still all and everything is still colored digitally. That was something that even XL Saga did an episode on, where they talked about where they actually mentioned
Yes.
digital coloring.
Yep.
And XL Saga is, wow, that's such a great show to never show anyone. Anime and manga now take advantage of computer assistance or computer generation. You can now have someone create something outside the traditional industry. And on that topic, Chris, a lot of people aren't aware. They think that Hayao Miyazaki and Ghibli Studios hand draw everything, but there is computer animation in so many of their movies that
Yep.
you never know is computer generated. It's done to if you go back and you watch an old anime title, and you look at, say, like something from the mid '90s, late '90s, and it's all, it's hand drawn animation, and you see like the signs, and you see this. It's almost a very imperceptible wobble effect that the drawing, the lines sort of change sometimes, or there's a distinctive look to something that was hand drawn as it's being panned over or is being scrolled through. Miyazaki has had his studio digitally recreate that effect so that his films look more natural to classic anime.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little tidbit. Back in the day, Lucky Seven says like 93 or 90. I hit up Blockbuster, the local comic shops that rented out anime to find new stuff. Was definitely some excitement from those days, other than the fact that the comic shop mostly had hentai. Yes. Anime has trends just like everything else.
Mhm.
And he goes, yo ho ho. I don't. Explain yourself, Chris. Like I said, it says those do seem to pick up stuff that I don't think had been licensed before. Game Player S mentions original Dragon Ball was well over 100 episodes. Chris Wool says mecha battles to space westerns to harem to moe to isekai. Now, here's what you need to do. You need to figure out a way to combine all of that together into one glorious beast, and then we will either have the greatest anime series known to man, or it will end all life as we know it. Lucky Seven says, meanwhile, I don't own any 100 plus episode anime unless you just add all things Tenchi together. Good man. I'm not exactly sure what else I had on the agenda to discuss.
I think that pretty much covers it for today. I mean, we've been going for a while, so
yeah. But I think we covered pretty much everything. Physical collections, your honorifics, obsession, and I was going to play devil's advocate, and I was going to give you a hard time about that, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Your answer made so much sense because it's just like how I am. I don't want to call it a nitpick, but I call it a personal gripe. When I feel like companies don't present things in their, I'm a stickler for artistic integrity, and I feel like when something gets brought over, ported, whatever, that artistic integrity should be the first thing to consider. I'm anti-censorship when it comes to art.
Mm-hmm.
So when for example, if a anime production company is going to license a show and then they're like, oh, it's too ecchi, we've got to censor it. I'm like, well, then why did you license it in the first place?
Yeah, I agree.
Or worse, you have Dragon Ball Z, which, in my opinion, what has happened to Dragon Ball Z with its forced aspect ratio, its forced widescreen, its digital destruction, removing all of the artifacting. As a nostalgic movie watcher, those imperfections are perfect. They're fine. That's par for the course. That just adds weight to its age and its longevity. Don't take away the imperfections. Don't take away that little bit of grain. That's flavor. But when you do that, when you alter it to such a point, to me, it's no different than censorship, because you're altering the original integrity of the thing. And so that's always been my personal gripe. And I'm always going to be vocal about censorship and about freedom of artistic integrity every single time. And it especially goes for the anime and manga industry that gets such a bad rap when it comes to over sexualization of characters in those things. And I tell people all the time, like, look, over sexualization, you're straining at this little thing over here, but you're ignoring a plethora of the stuff that happens in other forms of entertainment all the time. You're literally targeting something that it's fiction. It's just like violence in video games. You can't justify saying this is bad for you, but this isn't. And so I think the anime industry is actually in really good hands. I'm really excited to see where it's going. I just wish some of the studios and companies would listen to the fans just a little bit more. I think we're getting there. Gaming industry, that's a different can of worms. We may talk about that next time.
Sure, sounds like a plan.
And we may talk about your online only detestment.
Oh, with games, yeah, we can do that too. Yeah, we'll definitely have to connect up and get another list of topics because this was actually a lot of fun. I liked it.
Oh yeah, it definitely was fun. I hope everyone in chat had fun too. I really enjoyed listening, reading your guys' feedback. We'll try to do this again. Unfortunately, this is something that I'll probably only be able to do on the weekends, and I don't want to like impose on anyone and say, hey, we got to do this every weekend. So I don't know how often we'll be able to get together, but let's just say as long as Astronaut Boy is willing, it will be whenever we can. That won't inconvenience the other.
Yep.
Now, I do want to make this very clear. I said this before. Near the end of the week, I'm going to be heading out, and I'm going to be going on a break for the holidays, and I won't be back until after Christmas. So there's going to be a little bit of a hiatus on the channel, and if I can, I will try to stream from my phone ? But don't hold me to that. That's a promise that I don't know if I'll be able to keep. But just remember, I'm going to keep reminding you guys until the last day that I'm streaming, and then the next day I have to head out. So anyway, you got anything that you wanna end with, Astro?
Well, yeah, I'll just do a little self promotion here if you don't mind. On Fridays, I'll be doing my Twitch stream at 7 p.m. Mountain, and right now we're doing Knights of the Old Republic. And then Fate Grand Order is going to be doing some Christmas events, so I'll probably be doing a lot more impromptu streaming. I'm probably going to simul stream to Twitch and YouTube. So for those of you who might follow me on either one of those platforms, that's my streaming plan. So do
you got a link that you can throw up in chat to your Twitch channel and also to your Twitter? A link to your Twitter, all your socials. Go ahead and throw those up.
Okay, so Twitch is coming up. Astro Nerd Boy. I'm basically everywhere. Twitter. Let's see, what is that? You caught me off guard on that one. Actually, I got a link somewhere. There we go. Copy, paste. Copy link. Come on, thank you.
Right. I also need to throw up my Discord while I'm
definitely.
at it.
You should do that because Western Otaku has a Discord. I do not, but there's me on Twitter and then YouTube. Let me get my YouTube deal. I apologize. This is probably going to have the auto subscription link. I think this is yeah, it does. So I apologize about that, but I should have backed out of it. But anyway, that's my YouTube channel with the auto subscription, but you could just copy the link and
auto subscribe. I want that for Twitch.
Yeah, that would be pretty fun, wouldn't it? That would be
okay,
pretty
guys.
fun.
Here's my Discord. Let me make sure that's the right one. Let me double check. Yeah, that's the right one. I accidentally hit it twice, and there was an extra H there on the end. So join the Discord. That link will be active for about an hour, and we've got channels where you can talk general conversation, safe for work, pictures only, please, meme time, YouTube music videos, anime Discord, and I also created a special channel just for some manga discussion. If you guys are game for that, think of it as like a forum, but not at the same time. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you very much, Astronaut Boy, for stopping by and for co-streaming. Yes, definitely. And we will definitely do this again.
Absolutely.
And so check Twitter, check my Facebook. We'll keep you guys updated on all the cool stuff that we're going to do. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.